So hey guys. The series name is What If Pervy Naruto Was Son of Zeus and Heir. So let's start the series. Kushina Uzumaki had said her final words to her little baby Naruto before succumbing to her wounds and the removal of her tailed beast, while Minato Namikaze had died shortly before from his use of the Reaper Death Seal Jutsu. Their child Naruto Uzumaki was now an orphan and the newest Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Naruto, I am sorry it was not me who died, so you can have both your parents, but I promise you I will do everything in my power to keep you safe from here on now. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, said with a sigh as he picked up the blonde baby in his blanket. He quickly sent a signal to his Umbu, who went back to the Hokage Tower for further orders. Hiruzen went to the bodies of his successor and his wife, intending to seal them up in a scroll to bury them afterwards, but he saw a faint glow, making him stop and hold on to Naruto protectively. There was a faint silver glow around Kushina's body and a golden glow around Minato's body. It can't be, Hiruzen said in disbelief. They told me their godly selves would return back to that place after death. He murmured as he watched the glow continue to shine. He got on his knees while holding Naruto and said reverently, "My lady, my lord, it is an honor and privilege." "Hey little Sarutobi!" called out the golden light. "Rise, Hiruzen." The silver lights said at the same time. When they heard each other's voices, the lights turned to each other and gasped, "It can't be you." At the same time, the lights pulled away from the dead bodies and formed into godly beings. The silver light turned into Artemis, Greek goddess of the hunt, archery, wilderness, forests, the moon, chastity, and childbirth. She was the daughter of the king of the gods Zeus and the titan Leto. She was currently in the form of beautiful red-haired woman in her early 20s with sharp piercing silver eyes. She was in full huntress gear but was unarmed, looking at disbelief at the godly being across from her. The golden light had turned into the Greek god of the sun, light, healing, disease, plagues, music, art, poetry, archery, reason, knowledge, truth and prophecy. He was the younger twin of Artemis, despite his joking claims otherwise, being a son of Zeus and Leto. He was currently in the form a handsome man in his early 20s with tan skin, blue eyes and blonde hair, looking similar to his mortal avatar Minato. He was a more casual outfit with shorts and Hawaiian shirt. "Please fates, tell me I did not sleep with my little sister when I was mortal," Apollo pleaded, dramatically ignoring Artemis' glare at him. "Shut up. If anyone is supposed to be disgusted, it's me. It might not be my true first time, but my mortal self lost her virginity to you," Artemis screamed while she kept shaking her head in denial. My lord and lady?" Hiruzen said quietly, still on his knees. "Yes, what is it?" Artemis asked, looking away from Apollo to the Sandaime Hokage, temporarily stopping their shouting match. "You are scaring Naruto, my lady," Hiruzen said, pointing at the now awake Naruto, who was squirming around and whimpering. Artemis immediately went quiet when she saw her baby boy. Two words she never thought would go together. She never believed she would get pregnant, let alone have a child, and even if she had a child, she expected it would be girl. For the first time in her immortal life she had no idea how to feel. Her original impulse was to dislike the child simply for being a boy, but a much deeper longing in her heart quenched these thoughts. She remembered as Kushina Naruto growing in her stomach for 10 months and how elated she felt when she discovered she was pregnant. However, Apollo had no such reservations and instantly ran up to his child with a massive grin. "Naruto, my little sunshine, did you miss your daddy?" Apollo said with a coo as he went up to Naruto and started making silly faces at the small blonde baby. Hearing the warm voice and funny expressions, Naruto calmed himself down and started gurgling happily, making his dad even happier, even minute. Despite what demigods and even gods believed, Apollo loved his children immensely. He went out of his way to claim every one of his demigod children as soon as they reached Camp Half-Blood, and was willing to hear the prayers of his children most of the time. He did not have any particular favorites, but he secretly thought hearing this child right now, Naruto, may have taken his immortal heart forever. Seeing Naruto happy, squealing snapped Artemis from her thoughts, and she knew what she had to do. She started walking towards Hiruzen and Apollo with a neutral expression, making Hiruzen nervous while Apollo put an arm in front of them protectively. Artemis stopped a foot away from them with a raised eyebrow. "Artemis, Apollo said sternly, making Artemis surprised as she was sued to her brother, calling her Artie just to annoy her, but his expression and voice made her a bit on edge. I love you, but no matter what I will protect this child. So not even you will be safe from my wrath if you hurt this child, no matter what you feel towards my gender. Apollo warned her with his eyes cold. Artemis' eyes widened before she looked down with a small smile. She knew he must have truly loved Naruto for Apollo to threaten her of all people. She looked Apollo in the eyes and said simply, I swear I will never harm this child. Can I please just hold my child in my arms? Artemis' eyes had grown soft and she pleaded, which in itself was a shock. In over 4,000 years Artemis had never pleaded as far as Apollo had known or shown this kind of expression. He looked her directly in the eyes for any signs of deceit. After a tense minute he nodded to Hiruzen, who lifted Naruto towards Artemis. She gently picked him up with a warm motherly smile as Naruto looked around confused. He felt himself leave the warmth of one person's arms, but then felt even safer and warmer in this new setting. He looked up to the beautiful silver eyes which looked soft as clouds as she peered down at him with love. Naruto, Artemis said in pure love and hope as Naruto looked up and cooed, raising his tiny arms. Artemis kept him at her chest level and put one of her fingers near his chubby hands. Much to surprise and joy, Naruto grabbed her finger with his tiny hands and pulled them towards his mouth, chewing on them with his non-existent teeth. This cemented his place in her heart forever as Apollo looked on with a warm smile and Hiruzen with a shocked but pleased smile. Based on what he was told, Artemis generally disliked males and he feared what would happen if she held her own male child. Apollo walked up to Artemis and Naruto and put one hand gently on Naruto's whiskered cheeks, making him rub his cheek against the warmth. Artemis noted his whiskers somehow made him even more cute and lovable in her eyes as she looked at Apollo, who like her looked confused. They no longer felt the same kind of love or intensity of that love when they were simply two mortals in love, but they knew that their relationship could never be the same again, especially with this child in their arms. So, Lady Artemis, what will happen to Naruto now that you, our Lord Apollo, are back in your godly forms? Hiruzen decided to ask the happy gods. He is coming home with us back to our world, Artemis said with a look like it was obvious. Apollo however frowned and said, Artemis, you know father will not like you having a child whether or not he is truly your godly child. Artemis hissed and glared at Apollo for speaking the truth. I don't care what father thinks, Naruto is our child and he is staying with us, no questions asked. Artemis replied furiously, holding Naruto closer, who looked innocent and cute. Besides, I am his daughter and I have always known how to calm him down when he is in one of his moods, Artemis said dismissively. Apollo chuckled, knowing full well that Zeus was strict on his children but a sucker for his two immortal daughters Artemis and Athena. Even if you get father to agree to let us raise Naruto, how about your hunters? Apollo asked seriously. What about them? Artemis asked, honestly curious. She believed they would treat Naruto as a little brother with no problems. Artie, you might not want to admit or see it, but your hunters adore you far beyond sisterhood. If they see you giving your attention to Naruto, a child they can never be, they may get jealous. Apollo reminded a annoyed Artemis. Even if they have some problem with Naruto being my child, they will listen when I tell them he is not be harmed and to be treated with respect, Artemis said protectively. Alright, but if something happens to Naruto and your hunters are responsible, just remember this. Their immortality does not protect them from sudden combustion, Apollo warned Artemis gravely. Artemis growled but nodded stiffly. I know we are his parents and we shall protect him from anyone, including my hunters, if needed, Artemis said, stressing the last part, making Apollo nod. My lady, is there anything you need to do here before you leave? Hiruzen asked, knowing it may be the last time he ever saw the two gods. A part of him wanted to argue and have Naruto stay in the village, but he knew Naruto would be safest and happiest with his parents rather than an orphan. Actually, there is something I need to do before we leave, Apollo said, making Artemis and Hiruzen look at him in surprise. Hey Shinigami, I need a favor, Apollo shouted, much to their surprise. The death god manifested in front of them as a spirit-like figure. What is it, Olympian? The death god growled. While few humans knew about the Olympian worlds, the gods of both worlds knew full well the existence of each other. The death god summoned by the jutsu was little more powerful than a minor god in the Olympian world. So, he knew it would not be wise to piss off two major gods, so he was somewhat respectful. And two, I want you to summon the souls of our mortal selves for a small chat before we leave. Apollo announced, making Artemis growl. What are you doing? This is against the very law of nature in both worlds. Artemis hissed as Apollo looked her straight in the eye. It is the least we can do to give Naruto one final talk with his mortal parents. When he crosses over to our world, his soul will never reach over here, so they won't even see him when he is dead. Apollo explained as Artemis narrowed her eyes in anger. I am his mother. Not that mortal shell anymore. Artemis said jealously of her mortal self. Yes, you are his mother, but so was she. Please Artie, just give this woman who allowed you to have a child a few minutes with her child while you will have the rest of his life as a mother. Apollo pleaded as Artemis looked down at Naruto, who had drifted off to sleep in the commotion. After a tense minute she stiffly nodded her head, staring at the death god. Just this one time, but you have to leave afterwards, Olympians. The death god warned as two souls appeared in his hands before they solidified into somewhat solid shapes. Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze were back to life somewhat as they blinked their eyes. Lady Artemis and Lord Apollo, we heard everything while you were talking. Minato said respectively, gazing at his son briefly. Look, I will be honest and say I would want Naruto to grow up here instead of your world. Kushina admitted brashly as Artemis' grip on Naruto tightened and her eyes narrowed. But our time is up and Naruto deserves love, so please show him the love we can no longer. Kushina pleaded with tears running down her face. Her expression looking at her sleeping son was one of longing, and knowing her entire life was not enough time loving this child. As Artemis and Apollo stayed quiet to let a dead mother look at her son one final time, Minato decided to speak. Please teach Naruto good values and morals. Do not let him become arrogant and try to have him make friends. Make sure he knows hatred and revenge is never the answer, and that love can come from a lot of places. Naruto, I love you. Minato said sadly, giving all of the fatherly advice he could for the first and last time. I promise that he will grow up to be the best man in existence, and he shall know what love means. Artemis promised the parents, who stared at her son. Minato, there is something I need from you. I would like you to transfer your half of the Kyuubi into Naruto. Apollo requested, much to the shock on the group. What the hell are you taking about, Databane? Kushina cursed as Artemis looked equally outraged. Naruto is already a Jinchuriki, which we can't remove without endangering his life, and now you want to take on an even bigger burden? Artemis asked, outraged. Lord Apollo, it seems illogically. The Kyuubi chakra inside me cannot be used by anyone else, so there is no reason why need to seal it somewhere else, especially into Naruto. Minato added. And 3. Naruto will have to face challenges in the future, and it is best if he has as much protection as possible. Apollo explained calmly, raising a hand when they about to argue. When both halves are joined inside Naruto, he will be able to use its full power in the future, and Artemis and I can be there in case something happens. Apollo elaborated, staring at Naruto while Kushina and Artemis glared at him. Minato looked at the death god, who shrugged before closing his eyes in thought. After a minute he opened them, full of determination. Alright, if you think it's best, I will do it. Minato said seriously, ignoring his wife and her godly counterpart furious glare. No, no, no. I will let out Sun become an even bigger target. Just leave the Kyuubi chakra in the afterlife like you are supposed to, and leave Naruto out of it. Databane. Kushina yelled angrily, with Artemis nodding her head in agreement. She was willing to agree. Kushina was Naruto's parent as well in this rare situation. Kushina, my lady. Minato said politely, making Hiruzen smirk lightly at how the mortal selves treated their godly selves with so much respect. If Naruto is the child of prophecy in this world, then the fates will make him a target in your world no matter what. At least with the Kyuubi fully intact, Naruto will have the power later on to face any challenges he gets to. Minato pleaded with Kushina, who still looked definite. Besides, he is our son and I want to believe he can do what we fail to and control the Kyuubi to protect his loved ones. Mia to declared, making Kushina sigh and nod. Artemis, other me is right. Besides, nobody me and you in our world knows how seals work, so nobody can ever unseal the tailed beast chakra inside Naruto, so he might as well have the most of a bad situation, right? Apollo, and 4, told his reluctant sister. Alright, but we will have to be there for Naruto every step of the way so he doesn't lose control, deal? Artemis growled as Apollo merely smiled, already knowing they would never let Naruto be alone. As Minato was about to start the seals, Hiruzen decided to speak up. Please wait. What will I tell the other nations when the Kyuubi suddenly disappears from Outworld? He asked loudly, knowing without a Jinchuriki the leaf would be vulnerable. Apollo smirked and said, tell them that other me and Kushina used the Reaper Death Seal to seal half of the chakra into each of bodies, and with the seal being a death seal the Kyuubi is unable to reform. Apollo gave him a grin and thumbs up, making everyone sweat drop. And for the Umbu who saw other me make Naruto a Jinchuriki, I already modified their memories being me and awesome. Apollo added smugly, making his sister roll her eyes, Kushina giggle and Minato laugh. And the fact we are vulnerable without a tailed beast to fight off other ones? Hiruzen asked drily. Hey you, Tsunade and the pervert being seal masters will more than enough to fight off tailed beasts. Nobody will question anything, as the three of you have sworn of the river Styx, and 5, so information about us and our world cannot be leaked. Artemis added impatiently. Alright. Goodbye Lady Artemis, Lord Apollo, and Naruto. May you rest in peace Kushina and Minato. Hiruzen said warmly before he used the Shunsin Jutsu to run back to the Hokage Tower. He already sealed Kushina and Minato body in scrolls before running off. Now then, tailed beast transference jutsu. Minato yelled after flashing through several hand signs. Red-tailed beast chakra left Minato's spirit body as it flowed into Naruto's small frame. Naruto did not even stir as his body sealed the other half of Kurama into his seal without any complications. Please show our love to him and raise him well. Kushina pleaded with tear running down her face as her form flickered. Artemis and Apollo nodded and Minato and Kushina hugged each other as they went back to the afterlife. The Shinigami gave the Olympians one quick nod before he vanished as well. Now then Naruto, time for us to go home and meet your family. Artemis said sweetly to her child as a silver light enveloped the three. After a minute they vanished as if they were never there. Artemis and Apollo reappeared with Naruto in the Huntress's arms on the edge of Manhattan, a few miles away from the Empire State Building. The Empire State Building was the current location for Mount Olympus due to the Heart of Fire moving with the gods. Wherever the Olympian gods were most worshipped, the gods followed allowed the Olympus. They were currently seated in the United States, where the gods had both Greek and Roman child that no longer crossed paths with each other. Artie, why did you send us so far from Olympus? Apollo, knowing full well Olympian gods could teleport directly into the mountain from any known location. Because I want to spend as much time with Naruto in my arms before the inevitable meeting. Artemis said softly as she gazed at the sleeping form of Naruto who slumbered peacefully in her arms. I think it would be best if you carried Naruto in your arms or a baby carriage first, as father will freak out if I have a child in my arms. Artemis said with a smile as Apollo gave her a sad smile. Despite not even a day, which to an immortal passed by like a fly, since Naruto's birth he could tell she sincerely did not want Naruto to leave her arms. They walked in silence as the mist covered their presence from mortal eyes, preventing anyone from interrupting them on their walk. After a few minutes they saw the building come into view, so Artemis reluctantly passed Naruto into Apollo's arms. Apollo quickly summoned another blanket to keep Naruto warm as he placed Naruto into a baby carrier with both gold and silver blankets covering his form. And 2. Artemis walked ahead, and a quick glare was more than enough to make the security guard to scurry off to another room. She never liked having a security guard to protect the elevator, but her father liked things a certain way. Apollo walked into the empty room as Artemis snapped her fingers, causing the elevator to appear and open, allowing the godly twins to enter. Sunshine lollipops played when the elevator started going up till a frustrated snapped her finger, making the music turn off instantly. Remember, keep calm, do not attack anyone, and to make sure Naruto's safety is first." Apollo murmured as Artemis raised an eyebrow. "I am well aware what is at stake, brother." Artemis noted with a sigh. "I was talking to myself," Apollo said with a worried look as Artemis looked surprised but pleased at him admitting his flaws. He was always confident although not proud like her father or their other brother Ares. After a few minutes the elevator dinged as both of the gods left with Apollo holding the baby carrier in his left hand by his hip. Many minor gods and nymphs were walking around chatting, but the instant Artemis and Apollo got into view they bowed on their knees. Luckily everyone was too busy bowing to take notice of the package in Apollo's arms. Artemis briskly walked past all the reverence while Apollo gave a quick nod of acknowledgement as they entered the throne room where there were 12 thrones for each of the 12 Olympian gods. Apollo and Artemis calmly sat down in the massive thrones, with the thrones rose up to match the heights of the other thrones despite their human shape not 30 feet tall height. Artemis and Apollo nodded before they each raised an arm and fired an arrow into the sky, signaling a meeting for the Olympians. They looked across from each other as they waited for the council to assemble. The first to arrive with the stern and rule follower Athena, who never arrived late to meetings. Athena is the Greek virgin goddess of wisdom, civilization, mathematics, warfare, city defense, strategic, law and justice, crafts, the arts, and skill. She was most famous for being the virgin goddess of war. She was a very beautiful goddess who wore elegant white chiton with her black hair and gray eyes. Despite her status, unlike Artemis and Hestia, she conceived mortal children by simply willing them into existence by having the minds meet of men she found intelligent enough. Athena raised an eyebrow at Artemis and Apollo human size but went to her throne without a word. She gave Artemis a warm smile that was returned and a quick nod to Apollo, who nodded back. She got along well with Artemis as they both virgin goddesses and had similar morals. Apollo and Athena were on opposite sides of the Trojan War. Athena thought he was too laid back while Apollo thought she was a bit stuck up. Next to arrive to the meeting was the mighty god of the seas Poseidon. One of the original 6 Olympians and one of the big 3. Poseidon is the Greek god of the sea, storms, earthquakes, droughts, floods and horses. He was wearing casual beachwear with his black hair and green eyes giving him a rough but handsome look. He did the common glare with Athena, which was mutually returned before nodding at both Artemis and Apollo before going to his throne. He got along with all the Olympians to various degrees besides minor rivalries. This was attributed to his more laid-back personality in recent centuries, although like the sea he could turn the tide in a heartbeat and become your worst enemy. Next to arrive was the busy Hermes, who had finally put Ho's phone down. Hermes is the Greek god of roads, messengers, commerce, travel, thieves, merchants, loads, athletes, and mail deliverers. Hermes was currently in the form of what mortals called a mailman with blonde hair and blue eyes. Hermes was one of the more laid-back gods along with Apollo, so when he saw his best friend/brother back he sent him a massive grin while Apollo gave a half-hearted grin back. Athena narrowed her eyes briefly at Apollo's behavior but put it in the back of her mind. Next to arrive was the goddess Demeter, who is the Greek goddess of the harvest and agriculture, also the goddess and presiding over grains, the seasons, the fertility, sacred law, nourishment, bread, and the earth. She was considered rather beautiful with long blonde hair and forest green eyes. She, like Poseidon, was an elder Olympian, having been born directly from the Titans Kronos and Rhea. She shrugged her shoulders as she chatted to herself about wheat when she sat down on her throne. This came a surprise to nobody, as it was well known this goddess had an arguably unhealthy obsession with grain and wheat. Next to show up was Hephaestus, who just sat down with a grumble with a few tools in his hands. Hephaestus is the Greek god of forges, fire, technology, craftsmen, sculptors, volcanoes, and blacksmiths. He was arguably the Olympian most pitted on Olympus, as his mother, for not meeting her expectation of an ideal son, tossed him off Olympus, crippling him forever. Despite more or less making peace with his mother, his injury continued to plague him to this day. Apollo had on countless times tried to heal him, but due to the extremity of the injury it would never heal, just merely adapt around it. Even Artemis, when she hated all males to various degrees, grudgingly admitted that Hephaestus got the short of the stick for gods. Next to arrive were Aphrodite and Ares together, who looked like they had a rather rough day of sex and hid no attempts to hide it. Ares even went as far to smirk superiorly to his brother Hephaestus for sleeping with his wife, which was ignored. Ares is the Greek god of war. His symbols include the boar, dog, wolf, spear, sword, and vulture. Ares currently looked like a common biker thug, which was believed to be the form Aphrodite currently enjoyed him as. Ares was rather disliked by most of his fellow Olympians, as he had an insatiable love of violence which made even his parents Hera and Zeus war of him. He self-proclaimed himself the most powerful Olympian besides Zeus. Despite him losing in a boxing match to Apollo, being bested in combat by Athena and arguably being inferior to strength to Hephaestus, he sent a somewhat lustful look at Athena, who glared at him, and Artemis, whose look would set mortals ablaze in agony. Apollo could feel his fist clenching at the look sent to his sister / technically lover / wife. Ares only sat down when Poseidon coughed and waved his hand at the throne. And 3. Aphrodite is the Greek goddess of beauty, love, lust, desire, sexuality, and pleasure. She was a unique goddess in the sense she manifested differently to each mortal or god set eyes on her. She would typically look like what the viewer saw as perfection x 100. She sent a superior look at Artemis, who glared back at her in hate. Their domains were considered somewhat opposite, with Artemis placing value of girls keeping their chastity and solidarity, while Aphrodite placing value on loving freely and having sex whenever one pleases. Artemis thought Aphrodite was stuck up and shallow, and Aphrodite thought Artemis was a spoiled brat. Aphrodite sent a wink at Apollo, who she had a few affairs with, and their flirty attitudes made them rather friendly with each other. Much to her and everyone else's shock, Apollo only briefly looked at her face before looking away completely. Nobody knew this, but when he saw Aphrodite, as much as he would deny it, he saw a mix of Artemis and Kushina staring back at him. The royal couple Hera and Zeus arrived, appearing on the thrones like the queen and king they were. Zeus was the king of the gods and was the strongest Olympians, with his brothers Hades and Poseidon being close in power but him still superior. Zeus was wearing a formal suit with his black hair and electric blue eyes, giving off the royal feeling. Zeus is the Greek god of the sky, weather, air, lightning, kingship, honor, and justice. Zeus looked around the room as he saw that Artemis and Apollo had returned. He had a smile. He gave a brief smile to Apollo, who nodded back, while he gave a wide smile to Artemis, who looked hesitantly at her father. It was well known he had a soft spot for Artemis and Athena over his sons. Hera is the Greek goddess of motherhood, marriage, familial love, and women. She was married to Zeus, but despite her domain itself being marriage, it did little to nothing from Zeus having countless affairs and children. It only made her incapable of returning the favor, so she took her frustrations and anger out on Zeus's children, both demigods and godly. Despite her unable to harm half the Olympian court, who were Zeus' children from various goddesses and mortals, she did not hide her distaste. She made the lives of Zeus's demigod children as miserable as possible, with Hercules being the most famous ones. Her look of distaste at Artemis and Apollo, not having missed them at all, were ignored, as they knew their existence went against Hera's very domain. Hera hated demigods in general, as she saw them mostly as abominations due to either broken oaths or cheating. Zeus sat up and was about to congratulate Artemis and Apollo on their return when Athena coughed, making everyone look at her. "Father, we are still missing Dionysus," Athena informed Zeus with some distaste. Zeus growled at the slight of an Olympian not arriving at a meeting before him. In his mind it signified they could be late, while he could not, so he summoned his master Bolt, and down at Camp Half-Blood a thunderstorm quickly boomed in warning. A few seconds later Dionysus teleported in, bowing to his father and trying to ignore his glare as he sat down on his throne. Dionysus is the Greek god of grape harvest, wine, madness, parties, religious ecstasy, and theater. He was the last Olympian in the Olympian Council after his aunt Hestia gave up her throne to avoid a civil war. He was an unhappy god of wine, being forbidden to drink his preferred drink after chasing a nymph his father had declared off limits. His mood further decreased when his father punished again by being the camp director of Camp Half-Blood for another offense. His mood soured after a few decades being forced to babysit ungrateful hero brats, much to the disgust of most of the Olympians who were forbidden to interact with their own demigod children. Let us welcome back Artemis and Apollo who have returned from the other dimension. Zeus said loudly as everyone clapped with various enthusiasm. Much to his surprise, his two children did not seem particularly pleased at the intro. He asked in fatherly voice, "My children, what is the matter?" Apollo and Artemis knew Zeus's fatherly tone would soon change, so Apollo bowed his head and said respectfully, "Father, I have news. I bring a child of mine from that world here." Zeus laughed, feeling some pride at his son for producing another child. "Well, that is nothing new." Athena said with a smirk, referring to Apollo, "Many demigod children." She was not surprised to see an annoyed look from Apollo, but everyone was when Artemis gave her a warning glare. "Way to go, bro. Another fine conquest." Hermes said, clapping his brother on the shoulder as Artemis had a perfectly blank expression while Apollo looked physically restraining himself. "Great, another brat I will have to watch over." Dionysus said with a yawn as he drank another Diet Coke. It was well known he had no love for heroes ever since Theseus abandoned Adrian on an island, who would late become his immortal wife. "Just drop that brat in an orphanage so we can leave and go back to our routines." Hera sneered at her husband's son, who glared back at her. Zeus sighed but secretly agreed with his wife that it would not be proper for Apollo to raise his own child. After several minutes of non-stop chatter and arguments, Artemis had enough. She stood up, ignoring the warning stare from Apollo, and said with pride, "I am the mother of our child." These simple 6 words made every Olympian get shaken to their core. Not only had the most man-hating goddess who vowed to be chaste forever seemingly broken her oath, she had broken it with her own twin brother. Now gods did not have DNA, so incest was impossible for children to inherit, but the godly twins were the closest thing to actual siblings for the Olympian gods. While everyone was shocked, the most pressing reaction was Zeus's, so everyone turned to the raging god of lightning who was sending off lighting around his body. "Apollo, you slept with Artemis despite her oath?" Zeus screamed, ready to blast Apollo with his master bolt no matter what he had to say, but to his and the council's shock, Artemis teleported in between her brother and father with a defiant look. "Father, I have not forsaken my vow, and Apollo has not taken advantage of me," Artemis said in a calm voice as her eyes shined dangerously. "Explain yourselves then." Zeus growled as he sat down, but hand onto his master bolt in case. "Yes, sister, could you please explain how you could be the mother of Apollo children without forsaking your vow to be chaste?" Athena asked curiously as the gods turned back to Artemis for an explanation. "Says the goddess who has children through a meeting of the mind." Poseidon snickered as Hermes laughed, but both clammed up when Athena and Zeus sent a glare their way. "When we got to that world, we retained some parts of our memories, but our powers were sealed and we become mortals." Artemis started as she sent a nod to Apollo to continue. "I became a mortal called Minato Namikaze, and Artemis became a woman called Kushina Uzumaki, and well, they fell in love." Apollo explained, ignoring the gasps at his use of his sister name. He also ignored the voice inside claiming, "Not just him," referring to his mortal self's feelings. Kushina was a Jinchuriki, a human vessel for the Kyubi, one of the 9-tailed beasts. Apollo said with some regret as Artemis kept a steely look on her face. "By tailed beasts you mean those pieces of the 10 tails who is rumored to as strong as a primordial in our world, correct?" Athena asked sharply as the gods shifted uncomfortably of beings in another world that rivaled them or possibly surpassed them. Zeus was particularly nervous/paranoid of that possibility. "Yes," Artemis answered with a sigh. To make a long story short, when Kushina gave birth, the power holding back the Kyubi was released, allowing it rampage in our home in the other world. To save that home and keep the peace, we decided to seal the Kyubi into another being to keep it tame our child, or more specifically our son Naruto Uzumaki. Artemis said with pride as Apollo sent her a warning look. "Son." The entire room shouted at once at the news. When they heard that Artemis in another body had a child, they all expected a daughter due to her well-known hatred of males. To hear she decided to keep her mortal son alive and bring him to this world was unbelievable. The room got quiet when they heard crying and whimpering from Apollo's throne. It appeared that all the shouting and yelling had finally reawakened the scared baby boy from his sleep. Instantly Apollo reached into the baby carrier and pulled the crying boy into his arms. The baby quieted down but still looked scared at all the giant beings looking at him in disbelief. Naruto managed to turn his head till he recognized his mother and reached for her with his tiny arms. The god stayed quiet, expecting Artemis to reject a child who was clearly a boy, but much to their shock the stern expression on her face had turned into a warm motherly expression. Naruto, sorry for yelling. Come here, my baby. Artemis said sweetly to the baby as she lifted him out his father's arms into her own. She quickly rocked him, which made him stop crying and quickly looked at her with all the innocence in the world. Apollo, please continue the story. Artemis seems distracted. Zeus said with a stutter at the sight of his man-hating daughter being a true mother to her baby male child. Yes, father. Apollo said with a bow before he continued. After sealing away the Kyuubi into Naruto, our mortal selves died and our godly selves were released. Believe me when I said neither of us realized each other's true identity, but we were still overjoyed at the sight of child, so we chose to bring him here and present him in front of Olympus. Apollo finished with pride. The gods did not know what to say at this point, but Hera made her feelings known very quickly. So, what is that spawn? A mortal, a god, or a demigod? Hera asked with a notable sneer as Artemis and Apollo glared heatedly at their son being implied to be a bastard. Lady Hera. Apollo said, a sneer. Our son was born when our mortal selves were married, so he is hardly spawn. Apollo announced, getting a shocked expression from Hera, as children outside of marriage was against her domains. Hera became speechless and a bit surprised, as this new development made the child in her eyes more worthy than almost all demigods. Artemis, Apollo, please answer the question on what species your son is. Zeus said in a polite but impatient tone of voice. Sigh. He is mortal, father, as he was born from our mortal selves, but he does have chakra, so he can easily have powers rivaling demigods. Apollo said reluctantly, due to a look from Artemis telling him to tell the truth. Now what to do with this child? Zeus said thoughtfully, as it appeared now Naruto was neither the child of prophecy or due to a broken oath, so he was a wild card at best right now. He saw Apollo and Artemis giving him pleading looks. Poseidon gave him a wearing look, as he never liked killing kids if he could avoid it. Dionysus clearly did not care. Demeter looked neutral. Hermes looked at the new parents before giving him a look to let them raise their kid. Aphrodite looked thoughtful, likely thinking of a love life to give the child if he so lived. Hera gave the child a look of almost motherly affection, which disappeared when she caught him glaring. Ares had a look like he had an idea. Athena looked thoughtful, as if calculating the pros and cons of the child. And Hephaestus clearly looked uncomfortable at the idea of killing the child, which Zeus mused made sense due to his childhood. Kill the brat. Ares said with a grin as he smirked at the outraged expression of Artemis and Apollo faces. Think about it, father, this kid has the power to rival one of us if he masters the power of the Kyuubi, and if we kill the kid now before anyone finds out Moon Virgin had a kid, no one will ever doubt her chastity again. Ares claimed feeling pride when his father looked thoughtful at the idea. Aphrodite frowned at her boyfriend, as she couldn't plant to the love life of Artemis' first child if he was dead. Hephaestus glared at his brother and looked ready to argue for the child's life. Demeter looked uninterested along with Dionysus. Hermes, looking at his brother devastated look, stood up and stood by Apollo. Poseidon summoned his trident and gripped it. Before anyone could speak more or do any actions, a hot burst of fire shot up in front of Artemis, Apollo, and Hermes, but they only felt comfort from their side of the wall. That will be enough of this talk. A woman's voice shouted as everyone turned around to see Hestia walk up in human form, but with an intimating look on her normally warm eyes. Hestia is the Greek virgin goddess of the hearth, home, the right ordering of domesticity, and family. She was the eldest Olympian, being the firstborn of the Titans Kronos and Rhea. Despite her peaceful nature, or perhaps because of it, it was an unspoken rule never to fight while in her presence was her being considered the true peace of Olympus. Her power, according to herself, was not as great as her siblings, but was rarely shown due to her peaceful and pacifistic nature. Sister. Welcome, but we have rarely seen you during our meetings, so we have you come? Zeus bellowed as the flames went down to only Hestia hand, but her standing in front of her niece and nephew still sent a message. Brother, I am always here in the hearth but rarely involve myself with matters. However, I could no longer stand by while you debated killing an innocent baby for crimes he has committed. Hestia said harshly as Artemis and Apollo gave sighs of relief. Sister, you would have me do nothing while a potential threat sits in front of my eyes? Zeus asked with a frown, trying to ignore the glare sent by his daughter. The other Olympians stayed quiet in this vocal match between two elder gods. Brother, do you know that is what Kronos thought when he first saw me? Hestia said with sadness as all the Olympians looked down, having heard or experienced the elder god's time with Kronos. When I was first brought into this world, I saw his eyes full of love, but when he saw me it changed to fear. Despite mother attempts he swallowed me to try to avoid a future problem. Hestia said with sigh as Zeus looked down. Do you wish to continue the cycle with your grandchild? Killing him just because you think he might be a problem in the future? She asked seriously. Zeus looked seriously at the thought of turning into his father by doing the same thing to his grandchild. Father, he could be an asset. Athena said, trying to convince her father to spare the child. He is not a demigod, but his unique nature from that world could mean he could unlock traits from Apollo and Artemis, the first of his kind, in the future. Athena told him as he looked thoughtful. Father, think about it. Ares argued, feeling keeping the child alive would be more effort than it was worth. Artemis, Apollo, how do you propose you keep this child from turning on us? With the tailed beast inside of him, he could someday rival our powers? Zeus said gravely after a moment. The gods held their breaths and prepared to intervene if needed based on Zeus's reaction. I will raise him to be the best man ever, and with our love guiding him he will never fall into temptation. Artemis promised as she gazed down at her son. Apollo bowed and swore he would do everything to keep the child on the right path. After a few tense moments Zeus had come to a decision. Very well, I shall spare the child, Zeus declared as he sent a glare at the infuriated Ares. Artemis and Apollo sent a sigh of relief. You both shall have till his 13th birthday to raise him well, but by then he must go to Camp Half-Blood and reside there at least in the summer. He shall be both your responsibilities, so if he falters in his path it will be both of you who shall be punished. All here shall swear on the river Styx not to reveal the existence of this child till he is claimed by his parents. Zeus decreed as the Olympians nodded at the arrangement. Zeus was the first one to get up but said with a gentle tone, use this time wisely. I usually would not give such leeway, not even to my own. Show me I made the correct choice, Zeus said as he smiled to his happy children before he teleported away. Hera merely looked at a child before nodding stiffly. I shall not make his life harder as he does not offend my domains, but do not expect help if he is in trouble. Hera warned the twins as she disappeared. Artemis and Apollo expected as much. Poseidon sent a grin at his nephew and niece as they walked over. Zeus didn't choose that decision simply because he was kind, you know? He told them with a frown. Father seemed strange at the last part. Apollo noted as Artemis nodded. You were gone for a while, but Zeus broke his oath and fathered a girl called Talia Grace. She is about 4 right now. Poseidon explained to the shocked twins. Things are going to get messy, huh? Apollo mused as a child of the prophecy had been born. Take care of your child and do not worry about the water. I do not take attack child in my domain for their parents' quarries. Poseidon said with a smile. Apollo grinned, always liking his uncle, while Artemis nodded, acknowledging her reasonable uncle. He teleported back to Atlantis. Dionysus had already teleported after the meeting ended. Demeter told them to feed him with lots of grains. Hermes offered to take their son on the bachelor's life only to dodge a throwing knife from a furious Artemis. Aphrodite offered him an unique love life which Artemis scoffed at. Ares glared at the twins and promised that in the future their child would not be coddled so much. Athena told them to raise him well and she was looking forward to what he would do in the future. Hephaestus grumbled that the kid seemed to have a lot of love in his life already. Lastly, when all the Olympians left, it was just the winds, Naruto and Hestia. Naruto saw Hestia and tilted his head, making her smile at his cuteness. She asked if she could hold him, and after some talking, they agreed, with Naruto initially refusing to leave his mother's arms. After Hestia rubbed his cheek softly, he let go and snuggled into his warm aunt, making her smile. The happy parents decided to name Hestia Naruto's official godmother, who agreed and told them she would look out for Naruto while he was at camp half-blood away from them. After getting back Naruto, who seemed sad to see Hestia leaving, they teleported together to Artemis Hunter's camp to explain it to Naruto's sisters. Artemis and Apollo had teleported with the wide-awake Naruto to some woods about 1 mile away from the current location of the Hunter's campground. "Naruto, time to meet your sisters," Artemis told Naruto happily, but her surprised Naruto started whimpering and looking around. He was nearly at the point of tears as the worried mother tried to soothe her baby. "Naruto, what's wrong?" Artemis asked Naruto worriedly, nearly at the point of hysterics, until Apollo coughed, getting her attention. Artemis was about to shout until she saw the baby bottle filled with warm milk. "Sis, Naruto hasn't eaten since he was born. Of course, he is hungry and scared," Apollo said calmly as he handed the bottle to the relieved goddess of the moon. Apollo had basic knowledge of babies due to his domain of healing, and usually sticking around a day with his mortal lovers before leaving them in accordance with the ancient laws. Artemis gave her brother a look of gratitude before she gently put the bottle into Naruto's mouth, making Naruto's cries stop instantly as he got fed for the first time. Apollo smiled at Artemis' look of pure happiness and serenity as she fed her baby for the first time. She watched him as he continued to take big gulps of warm milk. Apollo smiled but said, "Artemis, I think it would be best if you go on ahead and explain to the hunters our situation. Just send a signal when it is all clear and I will come with Naruto, okay?" Artemis gave him a look of surprise for his calm and rational side, but nodded gently, handing back Naruto, who continued to feed in his daddy arms. Artemis gave one last look to her baby before she sprinted to the hunters' campground within a few seconds. As soon as one of the hunters saw their goddess arrive, she gave a cry of happiness and sounded the hunter's horn. This made all 20 hunters along with her clone arrive, and to where Artemis stood there with a smile. Her clone nodded to her briefly before disappearing, getting all of the memories in a few seconds. Every hunter bowed on the knees as Artemis sorted through the 23 years, and 3, worth of memories her clone gave her. She noted that not much had happened while she was in the elemental nation world besides monster activities being relatively the same. No hunters were gained or lost, and that her uncle was telling the truth about a young daughter of Zeus being born several years ago. "My lady, you have returned," Zoe Nightshade said respectfully as she smiled, happy to see her mistress return fully. Zoe was a beautiful copper-skinned demi-titan whose father was the Titan Atlas. She, like all hunters, appeared to be in their teen years, with her looking like 14 to 16 teenage girl with a silver circlet in her hair signifying her rank as lieutenant of the hunt. She had long black hair and dark brown eyes. "My lady, is it true you became mortal in that other world?" a young voice said excitedly as Artemis smiled at the owner of the voice. "It was rumored that going to that realm as a god made you mortal with any damage not transferred over when they returned. Chloe, be respectful," Zoe chided the younger hunter as Artemis raised a hand. "Zoe, be calm." "Yes, Chloe, I did become a mortal called Kushina Uzumaki while I was in the elemental nations," Artemis confirmed as the hunters rose, with Artemis giving a hand signal. The hunters started to whisper in excitement, with most of the chatter wondering how many men she killed in that realm. Artemis sighed as she no longer felt the same hatred or mistrust for males she had prior to being Kushina. She learned that men could be good and women be evil, watching the war-torn world show no discrimination based on gender. "My dear hunters, I have treated you as my sisters and in some ways my daughters," Artemis started as the hunters beamed in pride and happiness. "However, during my stay in the elemental nations, I fell in love and had a child," Artemis said as she raised a hand at the shouts of outrage from her hunters. This made them quiet instantly due to years of traveling. They knew when their goddess wanted to talk, she had the floor. "Since this child was born when I was mortal, my vow remains, as I did not lose my chastity in my godly form," Artemis was quick to explain. "After some consideration I decided to bring my child over, and with my father's permission I am allowed to raise my child here with my hunt." Artemis finished, waiting to gauge her hunters' reactions before revealing more. Along a few minutes of discussion, Zoe nodded and said, "Although we are shocked, my lady, we would happy to welcome our new sister as part of the hunt, especially as she is technically your blood." Zoe said with a smile as the hunters cheered. Artemis sighed and thought to herself, here goes. My child is a male and his name is Naruto Uzumaki. Artemis finished as she braced herself for the screaming. The hunters instantly swarmed her questions of outrage. This is a mistake, my lady. This must be a trick. Our lady would never welcome a male as her own. Were just some of things she heard as much as understood their plight. Enough was enough. Quiet. Artemis said calmly but with her voice of authority as the hunt instantly grew quiet. Some of the older hunters remembered as nice as Artemis was to them her punishments for even hunters were legendary, and when she spoke in that voice, they knew she was angry. I know this is a surprise and I understand this is sudden. However, I will not allow any harm to come to my child. Naruto was certainly a surprise when I awoke as myself, but he is not a mistake. I have chosen to accept him as my child and care for him so he can be the first decent man, and I will not accept any harm to come to him at all. Understand? Artemis demanded with a glare at her hunters who reluctantly nodded. My lady, who is this child's father? Zoe asked carefully. She didn't instantly hate the child as she understood he was innocent, but she would watch him carefully for her lady's sake. Apollo also went to Otherworld and became a man called Minato Namikaze, who became my mortal self-husband. Meaning Naruto is our child born from love and marriage. Apollo is not my lover or husband, but he is still the father or my child. Artemis clarified as her glare prevented any more responses. The hunters were of course outraged at the possibility that Apollo took advantage of their goddess while she was mortal, but Artemis told them explicitly it was a true case of love which no longer applied in their godly forms, but Apollo was not to be blamed or harmed. Now I am going to bring Apollo and Naruto here so Naruto can be introduced to his sisters. No harm shall come to either of them, or whoever is to blame will be banished from the hunt with no exceptions. Artemis warned with her summoning a bow to show her resolve. The hunters gave her looks of fear. Hut swore on the sticks to neither harm them or reveal Naruto's existence till he was claimed by Artemis herself. Artemis aimed a silver arrow into the sky and dismissed her bow as Apollo entered the hunters' camp with Naruto safely in his arms. The hunters reluctantly bowed as much as they disliked Apollo and unsure of Naruto, he was still the child of Lady Artemis. Several hunters like Zoe noticed to their shock Apollo did not flirt or barely look their way, only focusing on Artemis, who had a happy smile seeing her child. As soon as he fed, he was looking for you the entire time. Apollo told Artemis with a dramatic sigh but huge grin on his face. He handed Naruto back to Artemis, who to the shock of the hunt had a huge motherly smile. Naruto, did you miss your mommy? Artemis asked with a coo as Naruto happily giggled at his mother. Zoe was most shocked as she was the oldest current hunter and she never saw her lady this soft and affectionate before. True, she was kinder to younger hunters like Chloe, but she never acted like a mother to this degree to anyone before. My lady must really love this child. Perhaps he can be different if raised by my lady and us. Zoe thought as she continued to watch the goddess happy with her male child in her arms. Okay ladies, since I am Naruto's father, I will be sticking around so he can have both his parents growing up. Apollo declared. The hunters were about to shout their disgust and disagreements, so he added with a sigh, fine, I swear on the river Styx to never look at, speak to or flirt with any hunter of Artemis inappropriately while Naruto is alive. Apollo swore with mild thunder, sealing the oath. This made the hunters gasp as swearing on the river Styx was serious even for gods. They all knew he would never try to seduce them due to their oath, but to swear to not flirt with them was uncharacteristic on him. Also, Lady Hestia is going to be his godmother, so she will stop by once in a while to spend time with Naruto. Artemis announced as Naruto cooed and raised his hands happily hearing this. You like Hestia, don't you? Artemis cooed in response. Happy Naruto already loved his auntie. This warm display warmed the heart of several of the hunters to see their patron so happy and to see that Naruto was not a despicable male as they met, but an innocent child that brought out true smiles out of his mother. Who would like to say hello to their new brother? Artemis asked as she turned Naruto so he can stare at the hunters with his innocent blue eyes. The hunters were reluctant to volunteer despite them accepting that their goddess had a child that was male. Most of them were not eager to accept him right away as part of their family. However, one brave hunter was thrilled. Chloe immediately ran Artemis and gently cupped Naruto's cheek, squealing in delight when the adorable baby started babbling and rubbing his cheek against her hand. Chloe was a daughter of Demeter who was physically only 8 years old before she became partially immortal. Her father had died protecting her from monsters, and left with few options. Demeter had asked Artemis to take her daughter as a hunter, which she accepted. Due to her loving father, Chloe never developed the same hatred for all males as most of the hunt did, and simply shunned having romantic relationships forever. Chloe was a petite 8-year-old girl who had long black hair and forest green eyes. Seeing Chloe accept Naruto right away made a smile appear on both parents' faces, and seeing she needed to make an example, Zoe stopped forward. She bowed to both gods before she stared into the curious eyes of Naruto. "Hello Naruto, I will be your sister Zoe and teach you how to treat girls right," she declared as she rubbed his head, getting coos in return before Naruto yawned. Artemis thanked both Chloe and Zoe before she took Naruto into her tent and laid Naruto in his crib, letting him suck on her finger before he fell asleep. "Good night my little star," Artemis told Naruto gently. Artemis summoned another blanket on top of Naruto that was silver and had written, "Mommy loves me." The rest of Hunt, seeing Zoe and Chloe example, had decided to give Naruto a real chance, as Zoe was their second in command and she set the example for the rest of them. Apollo had made his own tent appear and already summoned dozens of toys for Naruto to play with when he got a bit older. Artemis knew 13 years would not be enough time with her child, but vowed to make every second count with her child. It had been over 12 years since Naruto was born and brought to his home world of Earth. He was getting close to his 13th birthday, and he had left his home with the Hunt and his parents just over a month ago. His mother Artemis had wanted to wait till just before his 13th birthday to send him off to Camp Half-Blood like his grandfather Lord Zeus demanded. However, his father Apollo had revealed ever since the winter solstice where Zeus's master bolt was stolen, Zeus had become more paranoid by the day, and it looked like war was brewing among the gods. As much as it pained Artemis to say goodbye too early, they had agreed that Zeus would blame Naruto if it looked like the twins were conspiring to turn him into a weapon against him, so they sent him off a few weeks before the summer solstice a month ago. Naruto had said goodbye to his sisters, the hunters of Artemis, who despite their reluctance of accepting him due to being their patron's child and being male, eventually grew to love him as the one and only brother of the Hunt. Flashback 1 month ago. Today was the day he had to leave home and live on his own for the first time. Naruto could have easily run straight to Camp Half-Blood, but he wanted to explore the wild like his big sisters, much to his family amusement. Everyone knew this day would come, but it did not make it easier on anyone. He got hugs from every hunter, with even tears running down their faces which he pretended he didn't see. His two favorite sisters Chloe and Zoe were the most emotional about him leaving. They had accepted him the first day as he was brought to the Hunt, and he grew up loving his sisters the most besides his parents. Artemis would later reveal to him one of his first words were "ko" and "ze," to represent the bond he formed with them, much to their mutual love. Chloe launched herself into his waist as she kept blubbering about how much she was hoping to miss her little Naru, with Naruto wrapping his own arms around her in response. Naruto had originally found it confusing how he kept growing, but his sisters would always look the same until his mother explained about the oath, with the only love for a male they would ever would be sisterly love for him. "To think it just feels like yesterday I was being carried in Chloe's arms, but now I am taller than her," Naruto thought ironically, as he was now taller than his big sister. Naru. "Make sure you find only edible plants, only hunt animals if you need to eat, pray to Lady Artemis and Lord Apollo every day for guidance, and never forget us, okay?" Chloe told him with tears in her eyes. She would always remember the first day he arrived in the Hunt and how she instantly fell in love with his cute face. Despite growing up, his whiskers had remained but now gave him more of a feral look rather than simply cute. "I promise Chloe I will pray to Dad and Mom every day and will stay out of trouble," Naruto promised one of his favorite sisters as he patted on her head, making her pout. This got a laugh as she used to constantly pat him of his head when he was younger, and now he was taller enough to do it to her. After several minutes of tight hugging, Chloe reluctantly let go with tears running down her eyes as Naruto turned to his other favorite sister Zoe Nightshade. She would never admit it to anyone, but she was likely almost as protective of him as his own parents were, despite claiming it was just out of loyalty to his mother. Everyone knew Zoe had come to love Naruto in her own special way. Lord Naruto. Zoe said with a bow which made Naruto grimace. I mean Naruto. Zoe amended with a smile as she approached Naruto and brought his face into her shoulder. Naruto had grown up taller than most of the hunt, but Zoe was physically the oldest, so he still only went to her shoulder in height. Zoe started rubbing Naruto's hair in a comforting way as Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist, enjoying the contact between them. I know departing will be hard, but it is not like this goodbye forever. We will see you again, and once you have been revealed to everyone, we can contact you with iris messages. Zoe said in a comforting tone of voice as Naruto was at a loss of what to say to Zoe. It was decided that the minor gods would not be made aware of Naruto's existence until he was claimed at Camp Half-Blood, so Naruto would not be able to contact the hunt once he left until he was claimed. I know. Naruto said with a pout. As much as he enjoyed being cared for by the hunters recently, he wanted Zoe to see him in a different light, even though he did not quite get why it bothered him so much. Zoe laughed before pulling Naruto off her shoulder, to his confusion, until she leaned in to give a warm kiss on Naruto's cheek. Naruto's face turned the deepest shade of red possibly as the hunters giggled at their little brother's cute reaction. Apollo had bellowed in laughter while Artemis giggled despite feeling somewhat conflicted feelings. Unbeknownst to most, Hestia was watching and giggling to herself. Seeing her godson so flustered was greatly amusing. What was that for Dadabayo? Naruto stuttered distinctly, using his verbal tic. Apollo and Artemis had discovered, to the former's great amusement and the latter astonishment, that Naruto had gotten a variation of Artemis' mortal form Kushina, verbal tic Dadabane, which manifested itself only when Naruto was excited or truly flustered like now. Just something to remember me by, Naruto. Plus it is a special day for our little Naruto being by himself for the first time, so I thought you needed a reward of some kind. Zoe teased as she let go of Naruto and giggled. To her it was a sisterly kiss, but she was unaware of Naruto's confused feelings towards her as he started growing up. Naruto stuttered, trying to collect himself as Apollo clapped him on the back in congratulations. Naruto had recently started noticing that Zoe was rather pretty, and when they hugged, he could smell sweet caramel from her hair, which he rather enjoyed. That's my boy. Apollo said proudly as he wiped an imaginary tear from his eye and ignored Artemis thumping him on the head. Don't corrupt my baby. Artemis yelled at Apollo, who only grinned as Naruto smiled, used to his parents' mostly harmless fighting. Naruto, my advice as your father is simply follow your heart. I know the path ahead of you will be lonely and you will face many trials, my son. However, the lessons we have taught you will be with you always, my little sunshine. Apollo said sincerely as he wrapped his child in a hug which was returned. Okay, Dad. Naruto said simply as I could start to feel the realization this was happening and real. He had lived with his parents his entire life along with the hunt, so the idea he had to survive on his own a bit daunting. He also felt some excitement, which was likely because of his mother, at the idea of being independent and free to hunt what he wished. After a few minutes they let go and Apollo and the hunters left to give mother and child some privacy. Naru-chan. Artemis said with tears running down her face. She was currently in her 18-year form, which was the form she usually appeared in when she was around Naruto. Ka-chan. Naruto replied back, overcome with emotion as he ran into his mother's arms with Artemis wrapping him as close as possible. Artemis and Apollo discovered the native language of the elemental nations was something remarkable similar to Japanese, so Naruto had gotten an affinity for it from them. Naruto learned to speak English for normal situations, but when it was just his parents, he usually lovingly referred to them as Tu-chan and Ka-chan respectively. Naruto and his mom just sat there for a few minutes hugging, trying to absorb as much time together as they could. They knew they would see each other again quite soon, but it would still be the longest they were apart since Naruto was born. Naruto, despite loving his family with all his heart, admitted his mother is the one being he could not bear to never see. Artemis shared similar thoughts since Naruto was her first child. No matter what the method, Naruto would always be her true child, so he held a part of her immortal heart that could never been shaken. Despite being one of the more active Olympians, she admitted she grew colder due to her long life and lack of consequences. Naruto-chan. Artemis sniffed as Naruto just held on to his mother. I need to tell you something. You brought out emotions I never thought possible. Your birth and my time in the other world made me reevaluate what I wanted in my life. It was no longer just enough to survive and wait for a new exciting thing. I now want to live life enjoying it and making changes happen. You made that possible for me and Apollo to change despite us being stuck as the version of ourselves for the last 1000s of years. Artemis said, proudly, pulling back so she could stroke his cheek lovingly. And too, Ka-chan, I think you and Dad were always like this deep inside, but you never had an opportunity to show it till now. Naruto said, insistently refusing to believe his parents were the not this version inside. This got a smile from Artemis since her child believed in her so much. Now then. Artemis said seriously as Naruto nodded to her. You know where Camp Half-Blood is, so take your time exploring, but you must be inside the borders before the summer solstice. Preferably a few weeks before so you can have time to make friends. Pray to us every night as we will always be listening. Whenever you see our chariots, know we are watching over you every day and night. Try your best, but don't show off. Take pride in your accomplishments, but not prideful, as that is the ruin of every hero. Artemis listed off in her overprotective mother voice, as Apollo would call it. Artemis pulled back so other and child could simply stare into each other's eyes. Naruto was always awestruck at his mother's beauty, with him silently promising to himself to pummel anyone who dared hit on her or made perverted jokes at her expense. Artemis admired her child, who looked almost like a twin of her brother mortal self, but had hints of her mortal self in it, like his face shape and eye shape. She hoped when she claimed him some more hints of her would be visible in Naruto, but she still thought he was perfect the way he was. Present day. Naruto stopped reminiscing as he stopped above a cliff overlooking Camp Half-Blood. He could see a massive rainstorm all over Long Island, which was where Camp Half-Blood was hidden away from mortal eyes. Lord Zeus must be angry about something. Maybe it has something to do why Mom and Dad have been so nervous the past few months. Probably why there have been more monsters just wandering around too. Naruto mused as he pulled out a bow with 2 arrows notched. Despite being several hundred feet away, I could see a huge shape right before where he knew the barrier was. In each hand was a person. One was clearly a grown woman and the other was an unconscious boy his age. Before Naruto could react, the beast squeezed the woman, who vanished into a golden light, making Naruto angry beyond belief. He was taught to respect both genders, but seeing a woman hurt set his blood on fire. No! Naruto yelled, seeing the beast, called the Minotaur, clearly about to hurt the boy in its other hand. Naruto fired the 2 arrows at the same time, with both flying at lightning speed. Each arrow stuck into one different arm of the beast, making it screech in pain as it dropped the boy. It looked around in anger at what hit it, but it was already too late. Normally celestial bronze arrows would be enough to kill monsters, but it was particularly strong, so it was wounded but not defeated yet. Naruto had instantly appeared above the Minotaur with a blue ball of chakra in hand. Rasengan! Naruto shouted as he smashed the chakra orb into the head of the Minotaur as it screeched in pain. There was a flash of light as the orb grinded and exploded. It quickly dispersed into golden dust, leaving a horn behind as a trophy. Naruto quickly pocketed his arrows and bringing out his sword. He quickly grabbed the boy and dragged him up to the camp line. He went back as picked up the unconscious satyr and dragged him to the camp line. Naruto remembered the talk about satyrs with his parents. His mother seemed rather awkward and uncomfortable talking about them until his father revealed they were obsessed with Artemis despite her oath and her hunters. This both creeped and amused Naruto at Satyr's creepy attitude towards his mother and sisters. Chiron, I see them by the line. A female voice alerted Naruto people were coming as he made a show of having his sword out nice and visible. His bow was already sealed away back into his arm. Chiron grabbed the satyr while Naruto grabbed the boy, so they all crossed the border into the safety of the camp. My boy. Are you alright? May I ask who you are? Chiron asked calmly. Chiron was the immortal trainer of heroes who was a centaur, part man, part horse, and the camp half-blood activity director. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto replied as he noticed two females approaching, making his cheeks get flushed. He started noticing girls as more than before since he developed what his dad called hormones, with Zoe being the first and now the new girls making him flustered. Standing in front of Naruto was two girls close to his own age who were some of the prettiest girls he had ever met. Growing up in the hunt, he was pretty sheltered and not meeting many people. Even in the month he was out there on his own, he stuck to woods and mortal cities mostly with the money his parents had provided for him. He rarely had contact with females, so he felt a bit overwhelmed when he met two pretty ones who, unlike Zoe, were not bound by his mother's oath. One girl who looked maybe a year younger than him and a bit shorter than him looked at him with interest and curiosity. The blonde-haired girl had shocking stormy gray eyes that appeared to be analyzing him 1,000 ways per minute. She had long blonde curly hair that looked like the princess he saw in the tour books he read as a child. She seemed quite fit, although not the same level as his sisters. She had a tanned figure that looked like the people typically from California, and Naruto admitted she seemed rather pretty. Unlike him though, she seemed to try to analyze him without him telling her a thing. The other girl, who appeared to be a year older than him, was the same height as him. Naruto freely admitted to himself he thought she was super beautiful. She had tanned skin with beautiful bright blue eyes that looked at him warmly. She had long black hair that reached her back and a face that momentarily took his breath away. Naruto swore to himself for being so awestruck with a girl he had not formally met yet, knowing his mother would disapprove although his dad would likely cheer him on. Naruto swore her face had a red tint, but he was too busy trying to get his one face under control to notice. She also looked fit and athletic, although like the blonde girl not to the same degree as his sisters from the hunt, and too. Chiron chuckled then coughed, getting Naruto to start staring as the black-haired girl giggled and the blonde girl chuckled. Always nice to meet you, Naruto. My name is Annabeth Chase. Annabeth said, raising a hand formally in welcome. Naruto had put his sword back in its sheath and gasped her hand in greeting. Hi Annabeth. I hope we can become friends. Naruto said somewhat nervously as he was a bit shy talking to people he didn't know. Annabeth just nodded and stepped back. Naruto, my name is Silena Beauregard. I would not mind showing you around camp when you get settled in. Silena greeted with a wink, giggling as Naruto stuttered. Sure, I would like that as well. Naruto replied with a blush. Silena and Annabeth, please return back to your cabins, it is rather late. Naruto and I shall take Grover and our new guest to the med bay, and then I shall talk to Naruto in the big house. Chiron told everyone as Naruto nodded in agreement. Naruto picked up the satyr while Chiron grabbed the black-haired boy. Naruto waved to his new friends, who smiled and waved back as they started walking back to their own cabins. Once outside of listening range, Annabeth's brain started to turn, trying to figure out the new mystery called Naruto Uzumaki. Annabeth turned to Silena, who looked thoughtful. Silena. Naruto sure is a mystery, huh? I mean, he had a sword when we saw him, but what was with that flash of light before the monster disappeared? Annabeth asked eagerly. Silena looked skeptical and said maybe it was just a flash of lightning from Lord Zeus? I think you are overthinking this, Annabeth. Annabeth looked put down but relented. Maybe, but I saw you blushing when you saw him though. Annabeth teased as Silena stuttered. I have never seen you interested in a guy before, despite almost every guy liking you. Annabeth noted as Silena frowned. It was not her fault. Her mother was Aphrodite, meaning even at her young age she made guys' jaws drop when she walked by. She was not like a lot of siblings who loved attention. She would rather be a good friend than tease a boy. He seemed interested, that's all. Silena claimed, avoiding her friend's grin and eyes. She bid Annabeth goodbye as she entered cabin 10 with a small smile. Naruto Uzumaki, huh? I feel he will make camp more interesting. Silena thought as she re-entered her room, intending to sleep for a few more hours. Back with Naruto. Do you know who I am, Chiron? Naruto asked seriously in the big house as Chiron smiled down at him. Yes, son of Artemis and Apollo. I was the only being outside of the hunt told of your existence in accordance with Lord Zeus's wishes. Chiron acknowledged as Naruto visibly relaxed. I must say I have lived quite a long time and I have never thought I would see Artemis have a child, even a mortal one, let alone raise them. Chiron admitted as Naruto beamed with pride at the mention of his mom. Yeah, mom and dad told me it would shock a lot of gods and demigods when they claim me. Dad even said, it would be the reveal of the millennium. Naruto said, cheekily grinning at Chiron. So, this is the little brat finally about to take his place at my camp, huh? A bored voice said from the doorway as Chiron bowed. Lord Dionysus. Naruto said respectfully as he bowed. His mother and father stressed how important it was to show respect, especially to the Olympians, no matter your own feelings. Dionysus was exactly as his mom described him, as a sad, portly man who seemed to resent the very place he worked. Dionysus grumbled as he sat down on a throne he transformed from a chair. At least you have manners, unlike half of these brats who only whine I don't help out. Dionysus granted as he summoned a Diet Coke and grumpily sipped. My mom and dad told me to respect all gods, especially the Olympians. Naruto explained as Chiron nodded his head in approval. So was it worth it for Artemis and Apollo to bring you here and risk father's rage just to keep you safe? Dionysus said sharply as Chiron frowned. My lord, I don't think that is. Chiron started before Naruto interrupted him. No, it's all right. I am fully aware my parents took a huge risk raising me, but I swore to myself I will make them proud and prove it was not a mistake for them to have me. Naruto declared with convictions as Chiron looked proud while Dionysus looked intrigued. We shall have to see, won't we? Dionysus grumbled, although it had no heat. So, tell me, brat, why did your parents convince father to change things around here? He asked as Naruto raised an eyebrow. Change things? Mom and dad only told me this place is where demigods go for protection and training, and that children go to a cabin assigned by their godly parents. Naruto said with confusion, not hearing of changes. Must have wanted it to be a surprise. Dionysus grumbled as he waved for Chiron to explain. Chiron nodded and Naruto turned to him. You know that all minor gods, demigods and unclaimed demigods are forced to live in the Hermes cabin, correct? Chiron said with a sigh, as he had suggested at multiple times to Dionysus to have more cabins for the overabundance of the single cabin. These suggestions were left in the wind by the bored wine god, and Zeus refused to budge on the issue. Yeah, I heard about that. Naruto said with a sigh. He personally believed his auntie Hestia deserved a cabin for giving up her throne, but Artemis explained Hestia wanted no glory despite her vital role. Well, about 5 years ago Lord Zeus appeared himself and commissioned from Lord Hephaestus and his children to build 2 more cabins near the hearth. One for female demigods and male, essentially taking the minor gods and unclaimed from the Hermes cabin into gender-specific cabins. They are simply known as the other male and other female cabins. Chiron explained as Dionysus burped and Naruto's eyes widened. And 3. Yeah, father had a meeting of the council where your parents made a rather compelling case for the overabundance of Hermes cabin, so he agreed to make 2 more cabins for the what he called extra children. Dionysus recalled as Chiron winced at the name for the children. He had no power over the council, but he knew that small changes were still better than nothing, especially with decisions usually lasting thousands of years. Dionysus decided to add Hermes was so happy he hugged Apollo to near death while he looked ready to kiss Artemis. Of course, he ended up with a few dozen arrows from both your parents, but it was still rather shocking all in all. Dionysus smirked at the growl and then laughter coming from Naruto. Honestly, they ever told me of such things, but although that was when I first learned about the gods and that their demigod children got at least one dominant trait from their parents. Naruto mused as Dionysus scoffed, thinking this kid must be the reason why the party boy Apollo and stick in the mud Artemis started to change. That is correct, Naruto, although in your case, since you were born from their mortal bodies, it is a bit different. You do look similar enough to Apollo demigod children, but besides your small movements it is hard to tell if you inherited anything from Artemis. Chiron told him, looking at him closely. Naruto sighed sadly and said, yeah, mom says that too, but she is hoping my looks will change when she claims me. The plan is for dad to claim me when everyone is awake. Dionysus burped and said wouldn't count on anything changing, but I suppose anything could happen. Anyways, I am guessing Annabeth is a daughter of Athena and Silena is a daughter of Aphrodite? Naruto guessed as both immortals gave him curious looks. Mom told me Aunt Athena children have the same stormy gray eyes she has along with blonde hair from their fathers. Naruto explained, then laughed before saying, Dad once asked why Lady Athena only had children with blonde man, asking if she had some sort secret desire, but Mom says all he got was a spear thrust in his face and owl dung in his hair. Dionysus chuckled, saying, I remember that your stupid dad asked her during a meeting with nobody willing to take Apollo seriously for a month afterwards. Anyways, Silena being Aphrodite daughter, I just assumed since she seems, kinda mature despite only being just older than me. Naruto said with a blush as Chiron smirked and Dionysus coughed loudly. Anyway, I know it is only a few hours before camp schedule starts, but would you like to sleep somewhere? Chiron asked, concerned, before Naruto shook his head. It's okay. I take naps whenever, and when I go to Dad's cabin, I will get some real sleep. Naruto explained as the two immortals just assumed due to his dual heritage, he could sleep day or night. What can I do to pass the time till people wake up? Naruto asked as Dionysus looked bored. Do you know how to play pinochle? Dionysus asked as Naruto looked interested. Several hours later, slowly demigods left the warmth of their beds and gathered in the dining pavilion where breakfast was being served at the tables. In the front was Chiron and Naruto, with everyone giving their full attention when Chiron sounded a horn. Campers. As you might know, last night, we got 2 new demigods. One is currently resting, but the other is here with me, Naruto Uzumaki. Chiron shouted as cheers rang everywhere. Hope he's not our brother. He is too cute. Could be a challenge. I wonder if how slayed the monster last night. These were several of the things Naruto could hear as he noticed Annabeth sitting with kids looking similar to her. He assumed they were also children of Athena. His sweat dropped at the several of voices coming from a table of very pretty boys and girls, including Silena. As if on cue, a bright light enveloped him and he looked up to see a golden lyre above his head. Behold, Naruto Uzumaki, son of Apollo, lord of the sun, light, healing, disease, plagues, music, art, poetry, archery, reason, knowledge, truth and prophecy. Chiron announced as everyone gasped. This greatly shocked Naruto as his mother told him how Apollo had countless demigod children, so why was another one so shocking, he wondered. Son of Apollo? We haven't had one of those since. Yay, he's not our brother. Dibs. Humph, he might not be such a wuss unlike those archer pansies. These were several of the whispers Naruto heard while he looked at Chiron, who merely sighed. Naruto has been claimed and therefore join his brothers and sisters at Cabin 7. Chiron declared as several loud cheers rang from kids that looked like his dad. Naruto noticed that not one of them was younger than him, with several of them looking at him in confusion. Naruto quickly went to the table where he got smiles and claps on the back from every of his paternal brother and sisters. Hey there, new bro. My name is Lee Fletcher and welcome to Cabin 7. A blonde-haired blue-eyed boy told Naruto. He appeared to be 17, with him being a foot taller than Naruto. Naruto quickly introduced himself before Chiron spoke again. As traditional, before we meet our blessed breakfast, we shall sacrifice part of our meal to the gods. As everyone started lining up by cabin towards the giant fire pit at the head of the dining hall, Naruto made sure to look confused. Why are we burning part of our food? Naruto asked, pretending to be confused. Right. You're new. We burn a part of our food every meal as an offering to our parents or any gods. They like the smell of the burnt food supposedly. Lee explained kindly as they waited in line for their turn. Of course, Naruto knew this from his parents, but he never actually practiced it. Whenever he wanted to praise his parents, he did it directly in person, and he could talk to his Aunt Hestia just by whispering her name in the fire. He knew why demigods did it, besides to stroke the gods' egos, as his mother would say. Demigods rarely got to talk directly to their parents, and having some kind of sign they were listening was a great comfort to the kids. Several of his sisters asked why he had whiskers, and even one mentioned they were rather cute, much to his embarrassment. Naruto admitted they were since his birth and they simply grew along with him. Finally, it came down to Naruto to burn his food. To Apollo. Naruto said loudly as he had seen his older siblings do. He secretly also prayed to his mother and godmother, feeling a warm feeling in his heart which he knew meant they listened. Breakfast was a plate full of pancakes, bacon, and hash browns which to his delight tasted rather delicious, although not as good as his auntie home-cooked meals. After breakfast Naruto got annoyed at all the looks he was receiving, which he assumed was related to his claiming. "Okay Lee, why is so strange? I am son of Apollo and why I am the youngest member of our cabin?" Naruto asked with a mild glare as his siblings looked around, realizing he saw the looks he was receiving. "I mean, the books say Dad had thousands of demigods, so why I am the youngest right now?" When Lee looked away, one of his sisters decided to answer him, and too. Kayla Knowles was a Canadian-born demigod of Apollo. She was a ginger with a splash of green which she insisted wasn't dyed, although Naruto doubted it. She, like all of Apollo's children, was older than Naruto, being about 15. "Look Naruto, the reason why it is so strange for another son of Poyo to show up is that Dad hasn't had another demigod in early 13 years. You are literally the first the camp has seen in years," Kayla explained to the shock of Naruto. As several of his siblings were talking about how strange it was, especially as Apollo had at least one demigod a year before then. Naruto was thinking back to several years ago when he was 10 and started asking questions. Flashback. "Dad!" Naruto shouted, running to sit on his happy dad's lap while his mom just laughed. "Yes, sunshine?" Apollo asked with a warm smile, rubbing his excited son's head gently. "Mommy has her hunters, so does Dad have any children to play with?" Naruto asked innocently as both parents stuttered. Naruto was too young to understand how children were born, but just thought they were his siblings. You see." Apollo stuttered, trying to explain, while Artemis just sighed, getting Naruto's attention focused on her. "Nara, your papa has plenty of children who I am sure you will meet someday," Artemis said flatly as Naruto tilted his head in confusion. Flashback end. "Looking back, I think I noticed Dad looking guilty when Mom said that, but I could never understand why. Is it because he felt guilty about having all those children before I was born? Dad, did you change and not have kids anymore because I was born?" Naruto asked in his mind in a prayer to his dad. He did not receive a response, but felt his hair move slightly as if his dad was rustling it. Naruto was distracted from his thoughts when his siblings showed him the archery range for his first lesson. Naruto had a hidden smirk when he was about to practice his favorite activity. Meanwhile, on Olympus in Apollo's throne room. "What do you mean you haven't had a demigod since Naruto was born?" Artemis screamed at a serious-looking Apollo, who met her glare with his own solemn look. "I mean, I was with you and Naruto nearly the entire time he was in the hunt," Apollo said calmly as Artemis sputtered but still had a response in mind. "Yeah, but I thought some part of you was off having your fun while the main you were with us," Artemis accused as Apollo winced. While Artemis' clone had been responsible keeping the hunt strong and the same, his other clones had multiple demigods, mainly out of boredom while he was Minato. Apollo sighed before answering, "Look, I know my record with demigods is nearly as bad as Dad's." Ignoring Artemis' scoff, he continued, "But I love Naruto and I wanted to be a dad he could be proud of. How could I do that while having fun elsewhere and not expect my son to pick up my habits? Say what you will about me, but my love for our son and even you sis is real," Apollo explained with determination as Artemis was quiet, not knowing what to say. "Apollo, you," Artemis said, not knowing how to respond. As much as she tried to deny it, ever since they came back from Ebbing Mortal her attitude towards Apollo had changed. They no longer bickered as much, besides occasionally on what's best for Naruto. They hunted together more frequently, and she even allowed Apollo to heal her hunters, which she refused to do so in the past. Before Artemis had to answer, Hestia called them up to her hearth in the throne room, which could be used to see anywhere on Earth. "Congrats on your kid getting to Camp Half-Blood," Hermes said with a grin as Artemis and Apollo sat in human size in front of the hearth like all the other gods. They were all there except for Dionysus, who was in Camp Half-Blood, and Ares, who was sulking that his girlfriend was not interested in their bed today. Back in Camp Half-Blood, The entire camp had gathered to see Naruto's first archery lesson, which Naruto knew was his initiation into the camp, and them seeing if he inherited any of his dad's natural skill. If only they knew. Naruto thought drily as he picked up a quiver full of arrows. Hey, if you don't get it right in the middle it's okay, Naruto. Very few of Dad's kids get it right in the first shot. Will whispered in comfort tone of voice as Naruto grinned. I guess we will have to wait and see. Naruto said with a slightly cocky tone of voice. Naruto took a breath, and as quick as the wind an arrow flew through his bow right into the middle as everyone was quiet. Beginning's luck? Somebody suggested from the back as Naruto just shrugged. Naruto practiced for years with his parents and hunter sisters, so a non-moving target was no problem for him. Naruto quickly got a pat of congratulations from all his siblings, which he counted including himself was 12, so nobody had to share bunk beds. And 3. Naruto looked into the crowd expecting Annabeth to ask him questions, but to his surprise he did see her in the wave of blonde-haired, gray-eyed demigods. He remembered the boy he saved had some injuries, so he assumed maybe she was taking care of him till he woke up. Some ugly part of him was annoyed a friend he just made was taking care of another boy, but he quickly dismissed it. The same part was more relieved that his friend Silena was watching him with a bright smile that still made him a but flustered. Meanwhile on Olympus, damn, first shot bullseye. Poseidon said, loudly impressed as several gods gave Terry approval. Artemis and Apollo merely smiled with pride at their child. Aphrodite, sensing Naruto's feelings, squealed as Athena coughed and asked, something you find amusing, Aphrodite? As everyone turned to the excited goddess of love. Oh, nothing, just that our little superstar has a little crush on your daughter Annabeth, I believe her name is? Aphrodite claimed, enjoying the glares from the virgin goddesses. I highly doubt that. Athena said with narrowed eyes. My little boy is too young to date. Artemis claimed as everyone still gave her weird looks for her maternal side appearing for a male child. We shall see. Aphrodite said with a wink. Although I might be happy if he gets claimed by little girl Silena, who already seems to have gotten him hooked. Aphrodite giggled as Artemis glared heatedly. Artemis would not fault a girl for actions of her parents, but when it was her child, she believed she deserved to be but suspicious of her son's love life. Seeing Poseidon being distraught, Apollo pulled him aside while Artemis gave him a nod. I know you are worried about your kid, but he will be fine. Trust me, god of prophecy and truth here. Apollo said with a grin. Poseidon smiled, but his eyes still had some sorrow in it. Thanks to your son mine got to live. Poseidon said gratefully as Apollo knew he was grieving for his mortal lover. Look, I can't go into details, but we both know gold lights doesn't mean death, it means metamorphosis. Apollo told him as Poseidon sighed but nodded as they returned to the throne room, only to see Zeus glare at his older brother. The other god sighed and decided to leave as there would be another screaming match between the big three gods tonight. Back in Camp Half-Blood, Naruto enjoyed the next few hours where he learned some ancient Greek. Despite being taught by his parents, he played along, canoeing, which he was bored with quickly, and talking to nature spirits. To his surprise, they were eager to chat with him since they sensed he wasn't a horny teen boy, and they thought he had a nice, nature smell to him, which he thought was due to his mother. And 4. He even met the satyr he saved last night, who he learned was called Grover Underwood. Grover was nice but kept trying to sniff him, much to Naruto's discomfort, seeing he smelled like nature, and seemed oddly obsessed with it. Naruto covered himself, claiming he went camping a lot, but overall, he got along with the satyr rather well. Suddenly Naruto and Grover were called by Chiron, who revealed that the black-haired boy Naruto saved finally woke up, with Chiron wanting them both to be there when he started explaining. Grover quickly agreed while Naruto shrugged but agreed. Little did Naruto know he was going to meet Percy Jackson, the fated Big Three child who would decide Olympus's fate. Naruto and Grover went to the medical center where the black-haired boy was clearly freaking out while Annabeth was trying to be patient and not show her irritation. Grover! The black-haired cried as Grover gave a kind and sympathetic look. Hey Percy! Grover said softly as Percy looked confused at where he was. Percy Jackson, meet Annabeth Chase and Naruto Uzumaki. Grover greeted, realizing no formal introductions were done. Percy looked at Annabeth with a minor blush that turned to annoyance when Annabeth gave him a bored but calm look in return. Naruto finally got a look at the boy he rescued at the camp borders. Percy to him seemed almost like a normal mortal teenager he had seen in the cities. Unlike Annabeth or any demigod he had seen so far, it did not look like Percy had ever trained in his life, being rather average in height and muscles. Percy had dark black hair and odd sea green eyes, but nothing stuck out as super awe-inspiring for Naruto. "Grover, what is this place? Where's my mom?" Percy asked frantically as Grover gave him a sympathetic pat on the back while both Annabeth and Naruto looked away. Naruto felt guilty as he realized that woman he failed to save was Percy's mother, and based his observations must have tried to raise Percy as close to mortals could be based on his ignorance. "Percy, your mom is gone," Grover explained as Percy gave him a look of anguish. "No. Where will I go without her?" Percy demanded as Naruto gave him a small smile. "You can find a new home here with us, Percy," Naruto said with a sympathetic tone. "Okay, nobody has told me where I am and I am tired of it," Percy said grumpily as he narrowed his eyes. "I believe I can answer that for you, Percy," Chiron said as he wheeled in a wheelchair that Naruto hadn't noticed before. His horse half mysteriously gone, which he could only assume was some kind of disguise. "Mr. Burner!" Percy cried in happiness at seeing his favorite teacher. Annabeth shared an incredulous look with Naruto, who shrugged. It seemed to him, unlike Naruto with his godly parents, Percy's mortal mom tried to hide as much information as possible. "Yes. Sorry, that was just a pseudonym I used when I was teaching at your school," Chiron said with a warm smile. Percy looked confused, so he elaborated, "My actual name is Chiron." You came to my school just to teach me?" Percy asked cluelessly as Annabeth looked ready to make a comment, but Naruto and Grover shaking their heads stopped her. "Yup. I really do make the time, but Grover told me it would help," Chiron replied, pointing to the nervous satyr who Percy looked thoughtful at. "I suppose it would be best to start with what you do know. Percy, did you other tell you anything?" Chiron asked. Everyone looked at the nervous demigod. "My mom just said she was taking me a summer camp and I would probably not be able to leave if I got here," Percy said sadly as everyone gave him sympathetic looks. "I suppose it's a start. Percy, you remember the gods we talked about during Latin class, correct?" Chiron asked as Percy nodded. "You mean Zeus, Hades, and Apollo?" Percy said as Naruto prayed to his father to not be offended at such casual use of his name. He swore he heard a chuckle in his head. He knew his dad was one of the most chill gods, but he still wanted to make sure he was not offended when somebody not his child used his name without regard. However, Lord Zeus seemed annoyed as a distant boom of thunder reminded everyone not to use his name in vain. "Correct. Well, the gods are still with us to this day, and when they have children with mortals, they create what you are, a demigod," Chiron tried explaining as Percy looked skeptical. "But the gods are just myths. They are what people believed in before science explained everything," Percy claimed in denial. Chiron sighed, Annabeth looked ready to snap, Grover held Annabeth back and Naruto looked amused. Despite being born mortal by the gods' definition, he was exposed to gods from the minute he was born. Percy seemed the opposite. He was born a demigod but raised in such a way he could deny what was right in front of him. "Listen here. You are living in the realm of the gods, so get used to it," Annabeth said with a bite, unable to see how Percy was denying everything. Percy glared at her while Grover and Chiron were a bit annoyed at Annabeth's outburst. "That's enough, Annabeth. Percy just lost his mother," Chiron said calmly but with a slight tone of reproach as Annabeth hung her head down, both as she realized she was a bit out of line and that she disappointed her father figure. "I suppose it would be better if you watch the film and I can answer any questions you might have afterwards," Chiron decided, looking questionably at Percy. After looking at Grover, who nodded his head encouragingly, so Percy nodded his head in agreement. "Excellent. I think it would be best if Grover and Annabeth join us so Percy can have some familiar faces," Chiron requested as Grover nodded eagerly while Annabeth nodded reluctantly. And two. The group walked out before Annabeth realized something. Hey, what about Naruto? Shouldn't he watch the film as well? Everyone turned back to the blonde who waved half-heartedly. Don't worry about me. I knew about all this stuff for a while. Naruto said with a mysterious smile as Annabeth's interest in Naruto grew, but she waved back all the same. I will sure everyone for lunch, Naruto told them as they walked out. Naruto stretched for a bit before he walked off, wondering what he should do till lunch. A part of him was wondering who Percy's father was, since his mother was obviously mortal. One thought that popped into his head was Poseidon due to his similar looks, but he had his doubts. His mom and dad told him about the oath of the Big Three and how no other Big Three children were currently alive since the death of Talia, daughter of Zeus. He was so caught up his thoughts he didn't notice somebody in front of him till he unintentionally bumped into the person, hearing a girly groan. Sorry, let me help you up. Naruto apologized once he got his bearings in mind. He offered his hand only to hear a familiar giggle in return. Quite a hero, Naruto. Silena said with a giggle and wink as she grabbed his hand and pulled herself back onto her feet. Silena! Naruto exclaimed in surprise as his face got flustered as his hand registered how soft Silena's was. He didn't notice Silena's light-colored cheeks as she felt how strong and warm Naruto's was against hers. Silena pulled her hand back out of his grasp to their slight annoyance unbeknownst to the other. Yup, it's me. Silena announced with a happy smile as Naruto got his face under control. Were you looking for me or something? Naruto asked awkwardly, still not knowing how to talk to Silena normally yet. Silena sent him a grin and teasingly pointed a finger at him in accusation. Did you already forget? I offered to give a tour around camp. Silena asked with a twinkle in her blue eyes as Naruto's eyes widened. Are you free right now? Silena asked as Naruto looked thoughtful for a second. Yup. I would love to go a tour with you, Silena. Naruto replied as Silena smiled and walked next to him, starting the tour. Most of the tour was talking about each cabin and which demigods were allowed in each. Naruto knew or could assume most of it, but he thoroughly enjoyed chatting with Silena, who he realized was more than a pretty face. She was kind and cheerful, showing an interest in Pegasus riding and swimming, both of which Naruto was looking forward to trying. As they passed cabin 5 for Aries' children, a rough-looking girl and 2 of her brothers blocked Silena and Naruto's path with sneers on their face. Hi, Clarice. Silena said to the girl with a smile as the Clarice sent a rough smile back. Hey, Silena. So, this is the new Apollo kid, huh? Clarice asked, sizing Naruto up, who gave her a cool glare not intimated. Yup. Naruto and I were in the middle of a tour, so would you mind letting us by? Silena requested with a smile, but Naruto could hear a challenging tone. He had a feeling the two girls were friends, but somehow, despite being a child of Aphrodite, the Aries kids were a bit frightened of Silena. Clarice's 2 brothers growled, but Clarice sighed and raised a hand, making a path clear. She whispered, remember, we can't hurt Aphrodite kids or Dad is going to be pissed. This made the 2 Aries brothers growl, but then she added, besides, there is another newbie who needs an initiation later. This made all 3 give bloodthirsting grins as Naruto and Silena already walked by. So you two must have an interesting friendship. Naruto commented as Silena giggled. Yeah, everyone says Clarice is this bully, but you know SE is a softie at heart. Silena claimed with a grin. Somehow Naruto thought the rumors were not quite as outrageous as Silena believed, but he decided not to bring it up. As they walked past cabin 6, which was Athena's cabin, Silena decided to bring up cabin counselors, who for the most part was in charge of each cabin. She noted most cabins, like her own, was based on years being in camp. For example, Annabeth has been here for about 5 years, so she is the current counselor for cabin 6. I am for the counselor for cabin 10, as I have been here the longest, Silena revealed as she revealed a necklace with 4 beads. How does my dad decide who is the counselor for cabin 7? Naruto decided to ask, curious on how his dad's other children decided who was in charge. Silena gave a kind smile, happy to see Naruto curious about his godly parent. Well, Apollo cabin is a bit different from the rest. Silena told him as Naruto gave her a confused look. Instead of age or how long they've been here, they do monthly archery tournaments to see who is the best. Usually we don't see a lot of them as Lee has been a fairy and popular choice, but before him, I heard there were tournaments quite often. Silena told an amazed Naruto. She decided to tease him. Maybe you should try out? Silena asked with a wink. And 3, Naruto sputtered as Silena gave a hearty laugh. I did see you get a perfect bull eyes on your first lesson, so maybe you could beat Lee for counselor position? Silena mused as Naruto shrugged. Truthfully, Naruto hated to brag, but according to his parents his skills with archery rivaled all but the most experienced members of the hunt, most of them whose skill with the bow and arrow surpassed Apollo. Demigod children. He remembered his dad defending his children, saying they did not live for centuries to practice like his mom's hunters, but his mother dismissed this argument. Naruto knew he could likely win, but he had no desire to be in charge of his paternal siblings. Besides, if he knew the rules correctly, he would likely be his mother's representative when his mother claimed him, as the hunters rarely stayed at Camp Half-Blood. Thinking about that made him miss his parents and hunter sisters, but he knew they would see them soon. Maybe. Naruto said modestly, but decided to try to tease Silena like she did to him. If I did become a counselor, I might see you more, right? Naruto asked with a grin as Silena stuttered before he laughed, making her pout. They had walked by cabin 10 and Naruto and Silena heard some whispering. Hey, that's Silena and the new guy. They seem pretty close. Are they dating? I wanted him for myself. Naruto heard several comments like this as his yes narrowed and he looked in worry at Silena, who onl sighed. Is it okay for us to be seen together like this? It might send the wrong message. Naruto said in hesitation as Silena smiled warmly at him. Don't worry about my siblings. They don't like to do much besides gossips. Silena said with a sigh when Naruto still looked concerned. She added, I decide who my friends are and who I hang out with, not them. She said in finality as Naruto felt touched. She considered him her friend and didn't care if they were seen together. Before they could continue talking, a horn signifying lunch rang as both teens blinked. This was fun. Naruto told Silena, who smiled back at him. We should do it again. Silena told him and Naruto eagerly nodded as Silena waved to him. She started walking and for some reason Naruto was drawn to her pretty black hair and didn't realize he was watching her leave for almost a minute before he ran back to his cabin's dinner table. When he arrived, he heard excited whispers from his siblings and Lee even saved him a spot next to him to whisper, so you and Silena, huh? It's not like that. We are just friends. Naruto said stubbornly as his siblings gave him teasing smiles. Sure. That's how it starts. Kayla told him in an older sibling kind of way, making Naruto pout. Naruto decided he liked these siblings as well as they treated him like a brother, which he liked. Before they could tease him more, Chiron stamped his hoof, getting everyone attention. Campers, welcome Mr. D for this glorious lunch. Chiron announced as he got half-hearted claps for Mr. D from some of the campers. Luckily Mr. D did not care at all and rather lazily drank another Diet Coke. Chiron coughed and Mr. D sighed. Alright. Here's to a new camper. Blah blah blah. Peter Johnson. Dionysus said in a bored voice, waving his hand roughly Percy direction. Everyone turned to the extra boy table where Percy awkwardly waved back shyly. Naruto turned back to Dionysus, who gave him a tiny nod of approval that nobody saw. Naruto also saw a look of loathing he sent to Percy, who Naruto could only assume insulted the god unknowingly due to his ignorance. The lunch today was several grilled cheeses, fries and assorted vegetables, which Naruto rather enjoyed after the typical burning of the food to the gods. Naruto felt sorry for Percy, who unlike him seemed out of place in a setting so outside of where he lived. Naruto's parents prepped him for Camp Half-Blood for years while Percy's mother tried to hide the truth to keep her son safe. Naruto decided after lunch he would talk to the poor kid and try to become friends with him. After an excellent lunch and getting more teasing about his feelings for Silena, which he denied, Naruto decided no was as good of time to talk to his new friend. Hey Percy! Over here! Naruto yelled to the somber and confused Percy, who looked up. Oh hey! Naruto, right? Percy said carefully, not wanting to annoy one of the few people who seemed to want to be his friend besides Grover. Yeah, I am guessing you are having a rough first day? Naruto asked sympathetically as he waved to a few girls who smiled at him. Truth is, this is technically my first day too, Naruto admitted as Percy looked at him in surprise. Naruto seemed to fit right in and have the popular but kind feel about him. You're kidding me, right? Percy asked in astonishment as Naruto shrugged. You seem like you have been here for years. Percy said out loud as Naruto laughed. Nope, newbie just like you. Naruto told him with a grin. He could see the doubt in his eyes, so he said, I am guessing this is all completely new to you, huh? Naruto asked as Percy slowly shook my head. It's just last week I was normal kid going to boarding school, but now I learn I am part of this godly world that has existed forever right under our noses. Percy whined as Naruto patted his shoulder comfortingly. Hey, don't worry about it, despite what Annabeth says, nobody actually expects you to accept it all right away. Just go your own pace. Naruto told him as Percy felt a little better. Little did Percy know Annabeth was watching them invisible with her magical hat on. Little did she know Naruto could sense her due to his time training with his mother, who taught him how to focus on the smallest details. Maybe Naruto is right. I was harsh on Percy, especially since it seems like he was not told anything before today. Annabeth thought to herself as she trailed behind the boys. As Naruto and Percy were walking, they happened to stop by the archery range that was currently empty. Naruto got an idea and thought to himself, I am sure nobody will mind if Percy and I just practice by ourselves. Okay, since it's empty and it will be less nerve-wracking than having a bunch of people watching, I am going to see how good at archery you are, Percy. Naruto told Percy, who looked nervous. I have never held a bow, let alone shot something. Percy admitted as Naruto shrugged. Can't get better unless you try, right? Naruto asked with mirth as Percy nodded his head. Okay, so you hold the bow like this, pull back the string, aim and fire. Naruto told him, demonstrating every step in slow motion and firing the arrow. Like he expected, it was a perfect bull's-eye while Percy whistled in appreciation. Okay, you try it. Naruto told him, handing him the bow and quiver. Percy looked nervous as he out the quiver on his shoulder and awkwardly put the bow in one of his hands. Annabeth watched in interest as she suspected that Naruto would have no trouble with archery due to being a son of Apollo. She heard the gossip spread across camp, and was interested to see how Percy would do on his first try. Percy looked straight ahead at the target with determination as he pulled back the bow. Thud was heard as the arrow left the bow. Percy, you might want to pull back on the string a bit harder. It came a little short. Naruto told him a deadpan as he pointed to the arrow, which did not even reach halfway to the target before falling short. Annabeth had to restrain herself from giggling and face-palming while she was invisible. Percy looked embarrassed as he picked up the arrow again. Several tries later, Percy finally figured out how much energy to pull the bow back to get the arrow to actually reach the target. Was I ever bad at archery? I am pretty sure my sisters could tell me, but I have been using arrows for so long I can't remember my first lessons. Naruto thought to himself as he watched his new friend fail spectacularly at hitting the target at all. Meanwhile, at the hunter's camp, achoo! Zoe and Chloe sneezed at the same time as the hunters were currently dividing up several animals for their meals. Nera must be thinking about us, Chloe remarked as she rubbed her nose and smiled. A cheer could be heard from every hunter as they were talking about their beloved little brother. He must be. However, he is at that camp, a hunter said sourly as they hated the camp before due to the bad blood between hunters and campers. The hunters' attitude towards Camp Half-Blood didn't exactly improve when they learned their little brother who they loved would have to spend his summers at that camp. Zoe sighed as she agreed that the camp was for little children, but since her little brother was being forced to stay there, she made the other hunters promise not to burn down any more cabins next time they go there. It would do no good for her little brother to become a pariah if his big sisters caused trouble. Back at Camp Half-Blood. Okay, so now try to hit the target, okay, Percy? It doesn't have to be center or even close, just the actual target, and you be 100x better than before. Naruto told Percy encouragingly as Percy grumbled. Here goes. Percy announced as he pulled back the string and shot. However, despite aiming at the target in front of him, the arrow somehow curved and flew towards Naruto, who was behind him. Naruto effortlessly stepped back as the arrow landed where he stood. Percy, Naruto, and even Annabeth on how Percy made such a simple shot turned so wrong. Okay, I did not expect that to happen. Try it again, Percy. Naruto commented as he was thoroughly confused on how it happened. He could see that Percy's stance was right and he aimed correctly, but somehow the arrow missed completely. Percy was super embarrassed as 5 tries later the arrow itself seemed to intentionally veer off course, almost hitting Naruto twice, over the target twice, and unbeknownst to him an invisible Annabeth once. Okay, I seriously don't know what is happening, Naruto said with a dry voice as he knew there was no wind to offset the angle. The bow and arrow were fine as he used the same ones for bull eyes afterwards. It just seemed the arrow wanted to hit other things when used by Percy. Naruto heard people coming to the archery range and decided it was good enough. Okay, let's call it a day and pretend that it never happened, deal? Naruto proposed as he put the quiver and arrow back. Deal. Percy said sourly as they walked off and just started walking. So what did you do to piss off Mr. D? Naruto asked curiously as Percy grew annoyed. You mean that jerk? Nothing. I just asked him how he could be a god and he freaked out, Percy claimed as Naruto sighed. Naruto could understand what the problem was and decided Percy needed to know as well. Percy, I get Mr. D can be grumpy. Naruto started as Percy snorted. But think of this way. If you were a god, would you be happy if somebody didn't believe in you? Naruto asked Percy, who widened his eyes. I wouldn't like it. Percy admitted but growled, but he is still a jerk. Naruto chuckled as he figured Dionysus hated demigods on principles due to what Theseus did to his wife. I wouldn't say that to Mr. D face if I were you. Annabeth warned as she came up behind them to Percy's surprise. What are you doing here? Don't you have something better to do than following us? Percy asked in accusation as Annabeth blushed. I wasn't following you. I just happened to be around. Annabeth claimed as Naruto smirked, knowing she was invisible the entire time. The group spent the next several minutes bickering between Percy and Annabeth while Naruto just smiled. They happened to go near the camp bathrooms when they heard a rough voice. Well, if it isn't Owlhead, Blondie and the newbie. Clarice said snidely as she came up with a bloodthirsty smile. Percy Jackson, Naruto Uzumaki meet Clarice LaRue. She is a daughter of Ares. Annabeth said with a sigh as Percy looked at Clarice before he snickered. I guess that explains the smell. Being a daughter of the war god. Percy taunted as Clarice grew outraged. Okay, that's it. We have an initiation for newbies and I guess it's your turn, Percy. Clarice announced angrily as she stepped forward. Clarice. Annabeth warned as she tried to step forward only for Percy to wave him off. He knew he had to fight his own battles and not rely on Naruto or Annabeth to bail him out all the time. Clarice dragged Percy into the boys' bathroom by the arm as Annabeth worriedly followed behind. Naruto was about to join them until he heard a voice from behind. Looks like your little girlfriend isn't here to protect you this time. A smug Ares boy remarked as he and 2 of his brothers stepped out of the bushes and surrounded Naruto. Naruto blinked before realizing they meant Silena. Wow, Mr. Tough Guy, having 3 of you against 1. Naruto taunted as all 3 of them growled. Shut up. You are just a son of Apollo and we are masters of combat because of our dad. One of the Ares claimed boastfully. Naruto smirked as he remembered the irony at that statement. Flashback: Naruto is 6 years old. Mama. Why do I have to learn to fight with my hands and feet? Naruto whined as his mother just smiled and picked him up. Why can't I use a cool bow like you or a cool sword like Papa showed me? Naruto asked as he crossed his small arms childishly. My little stars, may heroes of the past have gotten used to using their weapons to fight, and when they are disarmed it has always ended badly for them. I want you to be able to defend yourself in every scenario. Artemis told him gently as he just tilted his head, not getting it. Artemis decided another approach. If you train like this you will be super strong. Artemis promised him as his eyes shined. I will be strong like Mama and Papa? Naruto asked excitedly as he bounced in Artemis' arms. Yes, little one, you will be. Artemis promised as she smiled at Naruto's giggles. Later Naruto would be trained in unarmed combats along with weapons, a decision Artemis never regretted. Present. Glad I listened to my mom. Naruto thought to himself as he causally dodged the punch the first Aries kid before punching him in the stomach. This made the Aries kid fall to his knees in pain. Why you? One of the remaining Aries kids yelled as he and his brother attempted to tag team. Naruto was much too quick for them. He quickly danced around their attempts to grab him before he did a solid kick to each brother, making them collapse. Well, that was easy, Naruto remarked to himself before his senses went off. While the Aries kids were on the ground groaning in pain, he did some quick jumps to avoid the tidal wave of toilet water that flooded out of the bathrooms and hit the downed Aries kids. Naruto had jumped far enough way to avoid the water only to see an enraged and soaking Clarice get carried out of the bathroom and onto the campgrounds by the water. You hear me, Percy? I will end you. Clarice threatened as her brothers, who were able to get up due to the water, dragged her away. Naruto heard her cursing before he focused back on the bathroom. What happened to your guys? Naruto asked in amusement and curiosity, seeing a soaking but not smelly Annabeth and perfectly dry Percy walk out of the bathroom. Naruto. Well, Clarice tried dunking Percy into the toilet, but for some reason the water burst out of the pipes, and same with the showers too. Annabeth exclaimed as she pointed to the ruined toilets and showers. Luckily, I was only hit with shower water, unlike Clarice, but this still blows. Annabeth said grumpily as she pointed to her soaked clothes. I am sorry about the toilets, Annabeth. It wasn't my fault, Percy said as he gasped loudly. Naruto raised an eyebrow when he saw the area around Percy was dry and Percy didn't have even a single drop of water on him. Annabeth gave him a dry look before he got flustered in shame. It was his fault. Somehow, he had become master of the bathroom. Maybe Percy doesn't like the bathroom very much? Naruto asked with a grin as Annabeth laughed and Percy chuckled. Not that I will probably using them for a while, Naruto remarked before he noticed Annabeth start to shiver due to her soaked clothes. Before anyone could stop him, Naruto grabbed Annabeth's hand gently, making Annabeth gasp, Naruto, what are you? Before everyone felt a burst of warmth from Annabeth. Next moment Annabeth's clothes were dry and she felt like she had a warm shower using air. Okay, that was pretty cool, Percy said in awe as Annabeth blinked several times before she came to a conclusion. This must be some child of Apollo thing that nobody has seen before, right, Naruto? Annabeth said with deep concentration. Naruto shrugged as she continued to ponder out loud. Apollo is the god of the sun and the sun does dry things, so it makes sense. In reality Naruto used some basic fire chakra manipulation without hand signs, but he let Annabeth think what she wanted. Naruto, you can let go of my hand now, Annabeth told him shyly as Naruto blinked before he pulled back with a quick apology. Neither of them noticed the other with a mild blush, while Percy just looked confused. I have made up my mind now, Annabeth declared as they gave her a confused look. About what? Naruto asked with an eyebrow raised. The next capture the flag game. I want you both on my team, Annabeth declared as the boys blinked before shrugging. See you both after dinner, Annabeth told them as she walked off, muttering to herself about possible strategies. Annabeth is kinda weird, Percy stated after a moment. She's nice once you get to know her, but she is smarter than both of us, so yeah, kinda weird, Naruto replied as they walked in separate directions. Soon word of the bathroom incident spread, but despite Clarice's protests no evidence could prove Percy was responsible for the bathroom destructions. Chiron decided it was likely bad pipes or divine intervention and declared the bathrooms would be unusable until they were fixed. He asked for the Hephaestus and Athena children to help rebuild the bathrooms, which they eagerly agreed starting the next day. The popular rumor was that Clarice had unknowingly angered Hephaestus or Poseidon, or Taichi was in a bad mood and decided she needed some bad luck. Nobody besides Annabeth and Naruto knew for sure that somehow Percy had unknowingly caused the bathroom incident. This kept getting more and more interesting. Naruto mused as he left the dinner hall ready for activities before dinner. The next day went interesting for Naruto and Percy. Naruto had made his daily burning of food for his parents and godmother at each meal. When people weren't looking, he stared at the sun during the day and stared at the moon at night. He knew his parents were watching him, but he still missed them. Due to how active the camp was, he had not the chance to use the hearth in the middle of camp to talk to Hestia. He did notice her for a minute where she gave a wave and wink before giving an odd look at Percy. He did think Percy blinked in confusion, but he waved it off. He predicted Percy just could not get a handle on archery. On his first lesson with Chiron, Percy arrows viewed off course consistently and even hit Chiron, who was behind him. As Percy apologized profusely, Chiron just gave an amused look as he plucked an arrow out of his tail. Naruto and Grover had a hearty laugh at their friend's expense. During their wrestling class, Percy was pinned easily by Clarice while Naruto was easily able to reverse any Aries boy who tried to pin him down, to everyone impressed whispering. Neither of them had any real good hand at forging, but to the curiosity of the Hephaestus kids, neither Naruto or Percy seemed bothered by the intense heat of the forges. Naruto knew his immunity came from his adoption by Hestia, a goddess of the hearth and flame. However, this still made him curious about Percy and his parentage. Despite both Percy and Grover being left behind by dryads in foot racing, Naruto easily kept pace with Grover, being in disbelief. How is he doing that? Grover demanded as he watched in envy as Naruto sat with a pretty dryad talking and with her giggling at Naruto. Doing what? Percy asked in confusion as he looked at his new friend in some confusion. Keep up the dryads? I mean, none of us can, since they have been running off from love-sick gods. Grover explained as he grumbled that Naruto was too popular, making Percy laugh. Luke, the head counselor from the Hermes cabin, and Annabeth both walked in as they greeted Percy and Grover. Percy, this is Luke Castellan. Annabeth said with a warm smile, being around her childhood friend as Percy and Luke exchanged a high five. And two, hey Percy. I am guessing you are having a hard first couple of days? Luke asked sympathetically as Percy nodded his head glumly. Yeah. Everything is so new here and I don't seem to be good at anything really. Percy said with a scowl as Grover pat him on the shoulder. Hey. We all feel like that our first days, but then we learn we are a huge extended family. Luke told him kindly as Percy felt a smile appear on his face. It seems like your friend Naruto is doing fine though. Luke pointed out to the happy Naruto and Dryad. Yeah, Naruto seems like this is all second nature to him, despite him only being the same amount of time as Percy. Annabeth remarked with curiosity. Yeah, he seems like something else. Luke said offhandedly as nobody noticed the dark glint in his eyes as he took a quick look at Naruto. After a minute, Naruto said bye to his new Dryad friend and rejoined his group of friends, including meeting Luke. Luke seems nice enough, but for some reason I feel like he is hiding something big. Naruto thought to himself suspiciously as it almost seemed fake how nice Luke was being. Apollo assured him he did not have the gift of prophecy, but his parents both agreed he had sharp instincts and should follow them. Their next lesson was swordsmanship, and Naruto was quick to note it seemed it was much more popular class than the others. It seemed like all, if not most of the demigods were there, with a lot watching eagerly. Luke was the instructor of the class, so he ordered each demigod to pair up for sparring. Naruto was matched up a son of Ares who he hadn't met before, but judging by the look of hatred directed at him, his siblings were more than wary of him. Naruto spent several minutes just blocking effortlessly, not really wanting to put any real effort into it. He decided to end it by ducking underneath the slash and knocking the Ares kid's sword out of his hands. Yield. Naruto said as he stared flatly at the angry eyes. The Ares son reluctantly yielded and walked back to his siblings with his head held down. Naruto then heard a bunch of clapping from his siblings as everyone was shocked at his level of swordsmanship. How did he do that? A boy shouted. Beginner's luck? Somebody suggested. I thought Apollo kids weren't supposed to be good at sword fighting? Somebody from the Athena cabin remarked. Naruto knew better as his parents refused to let him go into the world without preparing the best he could, so every day since he was a kid he had sword fighting with wooden swords and eventually real swords with his dad and the hunters. Naruto just shrugged all these comments off and went back to the bench to watch how Percy was doing. Percy was trying to spar with Luke but unlike Naruto was covered in bruises and sweat. Naruto frowned when he noticed how odd Percy was holding a training sword. Maybe Percy needs a specialty weapon? Naruto thought despite himself being capable of using any bow or sword with relative ease. It did make him feel better to see Percy seeming to be genuinely happy at sword fighting. Despite being injured he looked focused and happy. Okay, 5-minute break. Luke announced as water bottles were handed out. Percy gave a sigh of relief as he dumped some water on his forehead and felt much better than before. Okay, this move is called disarming. No laughing at Percy as it is hard for anyone of their first time. Luke yelled as Naruto noticed several kids who assumed were Hermes kids holding back grins. He thought they probably had to do what Percy did and were happy to see it done to someone else. Luke showed off the move on Percy in slow motion and sure enough Percy's sword fell out of his hands. Okay, we are going to in real time, so prepare Percy. Luke said as Percy looked determined. Everyone looked in shock when Percy managed to block Luke's first strike with even Luke's eyes widening. He narrowed his eyes and started pressing harder with Percy starting to have a harder time blocking until he decided to risk it all. He did the disarming move and to his surprise and everyone else he managed to hit Luke's sword and make it fall out of his hand. He pointed his own sword at Luke's throat and there was silent for a minute before he said meekly sorry. He was not used to large crowds and peer pressure. Luke blinked and gave a huge grin and said sorry. You did great. This got some claps as people were still trying to process how Percy did what he did. Okay, let's try it again. Luke said as picked up his sword. This time it was no contest as Percy was instantly disarmed, but Naruto did notice that he seemed even more exhausted than before he had that burst of energy. After a few minutes Luke announced the lesson was over. Percy and Naruto could hear whispering asking if it was fluke or just beginning luck. Percy tried to explain but Naruto just told him to ignore the gossip as he was doing. Their next class with ancient Greek where they learned Annabeth was the teacher. She was blunt but fair in her teaching as Percy slowly learned how to read ancient Greek. His parents told him that demigods due to their partial godly blood did better with ancient Greek than English. They had a condition called dyslexia. Naruto did not have that issue but could read, write and speak English, ancient Greek and Japanese with no problems. Naruto decided he did not want to make his new friend feel bad so he pretended to stumble with words too, but Annabeth knowing Luke told him she did not believe him. Luke had split from the group after the combat lesson due to being able to read ancient Greek well enough and wanting some time to himself. Annabeth decided to stay with the boys as they did canoeing. Naruto canoed as well as anyone could expect of a normal person, but Percy seemed to instantly get it, making much longer strides with no visible efforts. Naruto knew Percy felt good having something he was good at while Naruto thought it was a minor skill at best. Afterwards the trio, as Grover had decided to run after Dryads again, had decided to just relax by the lake. Percy decided to ask a question that was nagging him for a while. Annabeth. What is this capture the flag you want me and Naruto to be on your team for? Percy asked as Annabeth blinked before realizing nobody told the boys. You see, it's a game we have every Friday. It is a team-based game where you try to capture the opposite team's flag. Annabeth began explaining as she also mentioned how teams were selected by cabins uniting on one side in exchange for the chance for cabin rights for the week. She briefly explained how there was 2 flags, one for each team, and how the goal was to take the opposite team flag past the river in the middle of the forest. Naruto will be on my team as I convinced Lee to join the blue team, which is my cabins for this week. Percy, since you are in the extra male cabin you are also on my side. Annabeth explained as Percy looked confused at something. I might be missing something, but why is there only one cabin for all the guys who are not in the other cabins? Percy asked, finding it a bit unfair that everyone who wasn't claimed or a child of one of Olympians had to sleep together despite not being siblings. Annabeth suddenly looked nervous while Naruto looked stoic. You see, before 5 years ago everyone who wasn't claimed on had parents in a named cabin had to bunk with Hermes' cabin. Annabeth said with some regret. Percy looked appalled while Naruto frowned. You mean everyone had to sleep in that one cabin? There is no way one cabin could hold everyone. Percy said in outraged. Annabeth looked around expecting thunder, but she was pleased to hear nothing. Yes, nobody knows the reason, but 2 extra cabins were added, so consider yourself lucky, Percy. Before there was so many people there wasn't even beds for everyone. If you knew you slept in a tiny corner on the floor. Annabeth warned as Percy gulped. Sure, he had to sleep in a sleeping bag in the male cabin, but at least there was enough space to walk around in. Percy was depressed at that thought until Naruto and him noticed 2 teenager girls sitting on the bottom of the lake. They looked like pretty regular girls with blue jeans and green shirts. They seemed to have no problem breathing and talking underwater, with even some minnows swimming around them happily. The girls spotted Percy and waved at him like he was a long-lost friend as Percy waved back in a daze. Be careful, those are naiads. They are terrible flirts. Annabeth warned with a blank face. When the girls spotted Naruto they instantly started giggling and pointing. They gave him a wink and wave as Naruto waved awkwardly back with a slight blush. He remembered hearing about them from his mother, who seemed particularly annoyed with them. Unlike dryads who seemed to want to be his friend, naiads seemed to think of a next big thing. That goes for you too, Naruto. Annabeth said with a frown. And 3. Okay, this is insane. Can I go home now? Percy said after a moment. Percy, this is home for us. There is nowhere else safer for demigods. We have a barrier to keep monsters and mortals out. Annabeth told him with a slight look of pity. Naruto did his best to look interested instead of smiling. Despite his training and many abilities, Artemis had assured him by godly hierarchy he was mortal and not a true demigod. Naruto decided to change the subject. So there will be a capture the flag game in a few days? He asked Annabeth as today was Tuesday. Yeah, and I expect you both to do your best and help me win. Annabeth told them pridefully as Percy and Naruto's sweat dropped. The dinner bell had rung, so the trio had said their goodbyes as they went back to their own tables to eat. Naruto's breakfast was French toast, maple syrup and pancakes. Naruto's lunch was steak, fries, and mixed veggies. Naruto's supper was the same as lunch but in a bigger portion. He had given his daily offerings to his godly family. He was excited for capture the flag in a couple of days, with him assuming he would be asked to do archery for his team. He also made a promise to himself he would watch out for Percy, since it seemed he would be targeted by the Ares cabin like himself. The next few days passed relatively quick for Naruto and Percy. They had gotten into a routine more or less. Naruto and Percy learned there was daily inspections of the cabins for certain rites in the camp. The cabins who scored higher got shower privileges first, and the cabin who scored lowest usually were stuck doing kitchen duty. The destroyed bathrooms were restored by the next day, which most of the camp attributed to Hephaestus being in a good mood and magically fixing it for the camp. Naruto had overheard from his siblings that the Hephaestus cabin could not explain how the bathrooms had more sealed off one night and fixed the other. Much to Percy's annoyance, his cabin, the extra male, consistently scored within the bottom 3 due to most of them not putting much effort into cleaning. Naruto was pleasantly surprised to see his father's cabin within the top 4, since his siblings considered it a thing of pride to make sure the cabin dedicated to their dad was kept clean. This oddly made him feel sentimental, since he knew his mother's cabin did not rank, as the hunters were rarely there and would not accept being ranked in the cabin rankings. Annabeth told them usually one member from either the Athena or Aphrodite cabins were the markers to ensure that cleaning regulations were kept up, instead of someone from another cabin being bribed into giving high marks for sloppy cabins. Percy had made a comment about Annabeth being too picky, which predictably made her even more strenuous about his cabin's hygiene during the next inspection. Naruto learned that it was usually in order of marks. Aphrodite, they never had less than perfect marks according to Annabeth. Athena, only just behind cabin 10 in marks. Demeter, Annabeth referred to them as a stickler to the rules, and finally his dad's cabin, which usually only lost marks as they did not make their beds as neat and tidy as the other cabins. After cabin inspections they had breakfast, which Naruto noted made Percy a bit glum afterwards. He sympathized, as it was clear Percy was still looking for a sign from his godly father. Naruto and Percy had ancient Greek with Annabeth after breakfast, with Percy starting to get some of the basic speaking down with Naruto holding back to the same. Archery came next, with Naruto still getting bull's eyes and trying to help Percy improve to no avail, as it seemed no matter what tips he gave him the arrows would never reach the target. Naruto secretly starting believing whoever Percy's dad was or one of his other children must have offended one of his parents to be so consistently bad. However, he thought it was possible archery simply was not in Percy's hands and it was nobody's fault. Then it was lunch, which Naruto quickly learned while healthy had very little varieties in selection besides the drink, which could be filled with anything non-alcoholic. He didn't complain though, as he rarely ate what his mother considered junk food, growing up with his mother almost shooting his dad when he offered him pop for the first time. Then it was weapon making with the Hephaestus cabin, which neither boy was particular good at, but they still enjoyed it reasonably well. Grover would join them after they had foot races with dryads, although Percy started to suspect this particular timing was no coincidence. After once again getting dragged off by several dryads for chats, Percy noticed the dreamy jealous look on Grover's face. "Gee man, you are not seriously jealous of Naruto, are you?" Percy asked in disbelief. Grover huffed, "Well, why wouldn't I be? I mean, Naruto can somehow run as fast as the dryad, but instead of being called a pervert when they hang out with him, they actually group together with him like he is family." Grover moaned while Percy rolled his eyes. In his eyes Naruto was simply friendly, as it seemed like Naruto just fitted wherever he went but still made time for him, making him glad to be his friend. The rest of activities varied depending on the day. Some days they had javelin throwing, which Naruto had no trouble doing while Percy could at least throw in the general direction, unlike archery which was a fail. Other days they had sword fighting, with Percy steadily getting better, but Naruto, like everyone else, noticed he had yet to display the same power he had against Luke on their first lesson. On Thursday Grover and Annabeth had joined Naruto and Percy for some time as friends before the big anticipated capture the flag the next day. It was during the free time before dinner. "So, can we leave this camp? It's supposed to be a summer camp, right?" Percy asked nervously. "If you want to die, sure," Annabeth said bluntly as Percy widened his eyes and Grover shot her a glare. "Annabeth!" Grover hissed as Annabeth sighed. "Sorry, that was bad taste." Annabeth apologized before she clarified. "Percy, this is the only safe place for demigods like us. It has a barrier and training as well," Annabeth told him as Percy slowly nodded his head. "Now that you know about the gods, if you leave this place your demigod scent will attract monsters, meaning your life will always be in danger," Annabeth warned Percy seriously. "Not if you are me and live with the hunt." Naruto thought to himself, as the hunt was one of the few places that had gods actively protecting it along with highly trained semi-immortal hunters guarding it. Of course, if you are a child of Aphrodite or Demeter you might be fine, as they are not particular powerful gods. Annabeth mused as Grover nodded. Naruto knew his mother would agree with that sentiment, and perhaps even his father, but he had some doubts. Seeing Silena talk her way out of a confrontation with 3 Aries kids impressed him. "So would anyone stop us if we tried to leave?" Naruto decided to ask. He knew his had to stay at least in the summer, but he wondered if other demigods were bound by some kind of oath. Annabeth frowned and said Mr. D and Chiron are pretty strict about he goes and comes. "It would have to under certain circumstances if you got to leave." "Like what?" Percy piped in as Grover looked nervous to talk. "Like a quest. I know I am ready to do one, but I am too young." "Ha!" Annabeth replied, muttering the end. "So, Chiron and the film mentioned that the gods and Olympus are here in America, right?" Percy started as Annabeth gave a simple nod telling him to continue. "So where is Olympus if it's in America right now?" Percy asked while Naruto looked politely interested. "The Empire State Building in New York. 600th floor. You live there, right?" Annabeth asked if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Grover mouthed, "Sorry," while Percy nodded, pretending to know that fact. Naruto held back a snort. He had been there once as a day-old baby, according to his parents, to convince the gods to let him live in peace. However, he had yet to return there as his parents did not want to tempt Zeus's temper. "Have you guys been there?" Percy asked with some jealousy while Naruto was also curious. Annabeth and Grover nodded. Last year during the winter solstice. Luke, Clarice, I and a few year-rounders took a trip up there. Annabeth said as her eyes sparkled in remembrance. I went along as kind of a chaperone. Grover added. Although after our trip we started getting bad weather. It almost seems like something was stolen. Annabeth mused as Naruto's eyes narrowed. He remembered how his parents were more nervous afterwards and how frantic they were to send him off to Camp Half-Blood earlier than his 13th birthday. Anyways, Athena can work with anyone besides that dispute with Poseidon, so I expect you both to pull your weight during our capture the flag game tomorrow. Annabeth warned the boys. Naruto gave a mock salute, making her chuckle while Percy nodded nervously. Percy in pure curiosity decided to ask why everyone had to sleep in the assigned cabins when there seemed to be several that were completely empty. Grover looked at the ground nervously and explained how you had to sleep in your godly parents' cabin or in the extra male or female cabins if you were not claimed by your parent. Claimed? Percy asked in confusion. Your parent will give a sign when they are ready. Grover explained. Seeing Percy still confused, Naruto decided to help out. I got claimed shortly before you woke up. It was like a light and symbol above your head. Naruto told him as Percy looked a bit envious. So, who do you think my dad is? Percy asked as Annabeth's face looked like her mind was running a mile a second. Poseidon. Naruto thought honestly but didn't say it as he knew it would be trouble if it was true. Especially with the oath and how paranoid Zeus was. Hard to say, buddy. You might be an Hermes kid, but he usually claims all his kids when they get here. Or maybe somebody minor like Nemesis. Grover said without thinking. Naruto and Annabeth's eyes widened in fear. Forgive him, Lady Nemesis, he did not mean that. Annabeth said loudly as she gave a low bow. Grover realized his mistake, but when nothing happened everyone relaxed. Fool! Are you trying to get us bad luck? Annabeth chastised as Grover looked sheepish. I hear gods can be pretty picky when you say their names. Naruto whispered to Percy as Percy was trying to hold a snort down. Guys, has anyone ever been down to the underworld? Percy decided to ask as he ignored the sad looks at him. I mean, several people got close. You are not thinking of going down there, are you? Grover said in alarm. No. Percy said too quickly so everyone knew he was lying. Annabeth gave him a sad look while Naruto grit his teeth. He was too slow to save them both, but he felt like he was missing something important. It just didn't add up. Percy's mother turning into gold instead of body. Before anyone could say anything else, the dinner bell rang and they said their goodbyes. After dinner, Naruto looked up at the moon and whispered, Ka-chan, To-chan, I will make you proud tomorrow. He fell asleep before he could see the moon glow brighter than usual. The next morning the air was ablaze with the weekly capture the flag, especially with 2 new campers joining for this one. After breakfast the Athena cabin brought a long blue silk banner as the Ares camp glared daggers. Annabeth had managed to get the Hermes cabin, Apollo cabin and the extra male cabins to join the Athena cabin for this game while the others joined the Ares cabin. As Luke got Percy suited up with a sword, shield and armor, Annabeth pulled him aside and looked a bit nervous. Okay, you are not going to like this. Annabeth told him as Naruto's eyes narrowed. Clarice and the Ares cabin still hold a massive grudge against Percy for the toilet incident. I don't like where this is going. Naruto said with a frown. I know, but hear me out. If the entire Ares cabin goes after Percy, then Luke and the rest of the Hermes cabin can more easily sneak the flag back to our side. Annabeth said with a glint. Percy will be slaughtered, you know. He is still a newbie and the Ares cabin are born warriors. Naruto retorted with some anger. That is why I will be there too. Plus you can protect him with arrows, right? Annabeth said with a stubborn tone. Naruto wanted to object but knew his friend would eventually have to hold his own hand in this life. Fine, but don't blame me if the Ares cabin is in stretchers for the next couple of days. Naruto warned Annabeth to her confusion as she went off to reveal the official plans. Percy was a bit muffed when he was on guard duty and when Annabeth gave him a suspicious look when he asked if she had any magical items he could borrow. The game began and he soon lost track of Naruto, but he assumed it was because he was somewhere high being an archer. Several minutes alter with Percy getting sweaty in the uncomfortable armor, he heard an unpleasant familiar voice. Looks like Owlhead has left only one loser to guard their flag. Too bad for her, Clarice said with a massive smirk as she walked towards Percy from the bushes. To Percy's fear, 8 of her brothers were also behind her with identical bloodthirsty smirks. He acted brave and taunted, I guess one blast of toilet water wasn't enough, huh Clarice? Clarice growled, remembering the humiliation from that incident, and ran towards Percy with her spear in hand. Percy barely blocked it with his shield as he fumbled a bit. The Ares sons were about to join in until to their surprise an arrow was shot right before each of them, stopping them in their tracks. Everyone had jerked up when Naruto's confident voice shouted from the tree top. 9-on-1 is pretty unfair. How about I even it out, Naruto? Percy said in relief as Clarice growled. Naruto did an impressive leap, landing on his feet in between Percy and the Ares boys. How about you fight me instead? Naruto asked as he glared at the Ares boys. After a moment a mocking laugh could be heard. You take us all? You're just a wimpy son of Apollo. Well, this wimp took on 3 at once before what's another 6? Naruto retorted with a smirk when the outraged looks focused on him. Clarice, he is ours. One of them shouted to Clarice, who started attacking Percy once again. Naruto took his bow and put it back on his back. He then put his left hand forward with a "come on" expression as they charged at him. Naruto stepped back to avoid one swing as he sent a punch to another Ares kid's face, smashing their nose in. He boobed and waved through a series of attacks before he started his counterattack. Meanwhile, Percy was on the ground after Clarice's thunder spear has electrified his arm and she kicked in the lake. Somehow, he felt better than ever as he fought back and even snapped Clarice's spear in half. You corpse eater. When I get my hands on you, Clarice threatened before she was hit in the head with the butt of Percy's sword and knocked out cold into the lake. Percy was about to help out Naruto but just froze in admiration as I watched him fight. Percy and secretly Annabeth were amazed at seeing Naruto fight without a weapon. Naruto moved his head to the side, avoiding a thrust at his back before he pivoted, driving his knee into the attacker's stomach. He then sidestepped, avoiding a strike, and used his writ to snap the wrist of the attacker, making him collapse in pain. He ducked, avoiding a leaping attack, and drive his elbow and knocking another one onto the floor. He sent 2 quick kicks into the unguarded shins of 2 more boys, making them collapse. The last 3 tried to gang up on him, but he was much quicker, sending quick jabs into the chests and face of his attackers as they fell over. The victory horn was sounded as everyone say Luke carried over the line as Clarice shouted curses at the trick. Where did you learn to fight like that? Annabeth said in pure awe, as she knew that nobody at camp could fight like that unarmed. Naruto just smiled as sent a nod to Percy, who was too stunned to react to Annabeth reappearing out of nowhere. Percy turned to Annabeth with an accusatory glare and said, You set me up. You knew Clarice would come after me if I was alone. Pointing his finger at her as she sent him a shrug. Athena always has a plan. Besides, I was here the whole time, but with Naruto here you didn't need the help. Annabeth told him simply. What happened? Oh, your injuries? She asked as looked fresh and not 5 minutes ago covered in cuts. Percy said, not knowing what to say. Step out of the water. Annabeth said with a look of deep thought. Percy reluctantly did and was instantly on his knees. Styx, I thought it was Zeus. Annabeth murmured before they all heard a series of growls. Get New York bow, hurry. Chiron said urgently as the rest of the camp was on top of the hill, seeing the 3 demigods in danger. In front of them were 5 hellhounds who all growled, glaring at Percy like he was prey. Percy, get back. Annabeth shouted as she readied her knife. Before any other action could be taken, one hellhound had an odd knife in its head before it turned to dust. Before the knife could even hit the ground, 3 more hellhounds fell onto the ground with knives in their heads. Naruto had thrown his kunai knives with perfect accuracy and speed before any of the hellhounds could react. The final one was faster and smarter and lunged at Naruto with his claws and fangs out. However, Naruto stepped forward and plunged a knife into its throat and said, "I won't let anyone hurt my friends." The hellhound had a frozen look of disbelief before it too turned to dust. Chiron looked impressed as the rest of the camp was silent at what they saw. Naruto picked up his knives and put them back so quickly no one saw where they came from. "You okay, Percy?" Naruto asked as Percy closed his jaw and nodded. Before he could talk, a bright light surrounded him. "He is getting claimed," Annabeth said with some worry. Percy looked up and saw a trident above his head. "It is determined," Chiron said as they bowed, and everyone reluctantly did. "Determined?" Percy asked in bewilderment. "Your father." "Poseidon," said Chiron. "Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of horses, hail, Perseus Jackson, son of the sea god." All of a sudden a bright light enveloped Naruto. "It can't be. No one has been claimed twice before," Annabeth shouted as everyone looked Naruto. To everyone's shock, he had two symbols. One of his father Lyre and one of his mother's deer. The second symbol made everyone drop in disbelief. Chiron held his knowing smirk as he announced, "Behold, Naruto Uzumaki, son of Apollo, lord of the sun, light, healing, disease, plagues, music, art, poetry, archery, reason, knowledge, truth and prophecy. Along with Naruto Uzumaki, son of Artemis, goddess of the hunt, archery, wilderness, forests, the moon, chastity, and childbirth." Naruto heard many whispers ranging from "it can't be" to Lady Artemis would have a boy, let alone with her brother. Naruto decided to break the ice and say, "I guess I get to be my mother's representative, huh?" When the shouting got louder, Chiron said all head counselors to the big house at once. Naruto just stood there awkwardly as the entire camp started yelling in disbelief at his claiming. It was hard enough that Percy was a son of Poseidon despite the oath of the big three, but the much bigger news was his parentage. Not only did it appear his mother broke her sacred oath, it was with her twin. Several minutes later Chiron had enough, and luckily Mr. D was there as well. "Shut up, you brats!" Mr. D yelled as the camp instantly quiet. They knew he was not allowed to hurt them directly, but nobody really wanted to test if he could find a loophole around his punishment. "Thank you, Mr. D," Chiron said calmly as he coughed to clear his throat. "This is no mistake. Naruto is the son of Lady Artemis and Lord Apollo," Chiron announced as several people looked ready to protest, but Dionysus' glare quickly silenced everyone. "If you don't believe us, take a look at our little superstar's face," Mr. D said as everyone gasped, making Naruto confused. "My face?" Naruto asked with confusion. Percy just pointed at the lake so Naruto could take a look. Naruto looked at his own reflection and could not help the gasp as well. He still had his father mortal looks, but not instead of just blue eyes. His eyes had a silver light to them, along with his spiky blonde hair now having auburn tips like his mother. Naruto was extremely happy to have physical signs of being his mother child, as his dad always joked that Naruto got his genes, much to Naruto and Artemis' annoyance. "Congratulations, Naruto," Silena silently thought, seeing the happy expression on his face. For some reason she had a feeling Naruto knew who his parents were from the beginning. Annabeth however realized something based on Mr. D's, Chiron's and even Naruto reactions, that they must have knew about this the whole time. "Chiron, you knew about Naruto and never told us?" Annabeth said with some hurt, as she considered him the closest thing to a real father she had ever had. Chiron stayed quiet, not knowing how to respond, as the camp once again went into yelling mode. Mr. D however was less impressed at the annoyed campers. "You brats have no idea what is going on here, and yet you demand answers?" Mr. D hissed as his eyes started to turn purple. As annoyed as he was at Chiron's soft attitude, he at least respected Chiron's ability to teach children how to survive, at least for a bit. Everyone grew quiet and afraid of the fuming god until they heard Naruto gasp and put his hand behind with a knife placed in it. "It seems like you have not been slacking, huh, son?" A cocky yet proud voice said in amusement, as everyone turned around and saw Apollo in somewhat casual clothes appear with his arms crossed. "Lord Apollo!" Everyone yelled as everyone, including Percy, fell to their knees. Naruto looked behind him to see a knife bounce off his own which was aimed at his shoulder. He had instinctively used a knife to block what would have been a blow to his unguarded side. He looked around until he saw someone in a high tree. He leapt back as several arrows pinned where his foot was. Chiron. Lord Apollo. Naruto is being attacked. Annabeth shouted in concern. Despite her hurt feelings at being left in the dark, she still considered Naruto a close friend. Several campers also looked worried, but to their surprise Apollo just chuckled. No need to worry, demigods. This is just a form of training. Apollo remarked as they looked at him disbelief. Who would be crazy enough to have this as a form of training? Clarice said gruffly. True, she loved a fight, but she preferred a fight she could see, not all this cloak and dagger stuff. Apollo grinned but had a dark look in his eyes as he said, you are lucky she is preoccupied training with Naruto, or you might be a nice squirrel for a remark like that. Clarice shuddered. As much as she would like to say she could take on the gods besides her father, she knew just like anyone the twin archers were considered the strongest Olympians besides the big three themselves. And two, she? You don't mean? Annabeth said in shock as everyone started to fit the clues in. Yup, Mama Bear herself, Artemis. Apollo said proudly as everyone turned back to Naruto, who had somehow gotten his sword out with silver arrows and knives surrounding him. It appeared he had deflected them all, leaving him uninjured if not somewhat tired. Glad to see you haven't let yourself grow weak, my little star. Artemis said proudly as she leapt from the tree and in front of Naruto, who was huffing a bit from exhaustion. It never seems like I can get any better, since every time I feel myself grow stronger, I feel like the gap between us never shrinks even a bit. Naruto retorted with a grin. Of course, not Naruto. I always bump up the training just a little bit every time you improve so you don't get a big head like your papa. Artemis revealed as Naruto shrugged. The rest of the camp were still on their knees but shocked silence at the interactions between Naruto and Artemis. True, most of them had not met Artemis in person, especially the males, but the myths and what their parents told them said she hated being around males, even gods. Yet the Artemis in front of them seemed nothing but happy and proud of her son, with Naruto seeming to have no form of formality around the goddess. Apollo whispered to Mr. D and Chiron, who whistled, getting everyone attention. Campers, in 30 minutes' time we shall have a counselor meeting in the big house to explain everything, Chiron announced as everyone slowly got to their feet. Consider the rest of the evening free except for the counselors, Chiron added as everyone looked at each other in confusion. Clear out, brats. Artemis, Apollo and I will be at the meeting, so the counselors better not be late. Mr. D snapped as everyone except Naruto and his parents left in a hurry. Apollo sent a grin at his demigod children as he winked at his girls and gave a grin at his sons, who awkwardly waved back at their dad as they walked off. None of them had much contact with Apollo, but he seemed nicer than what had endured from Mr. D. Silena wanted to talk to Naruto about everything, but judging by the mood of the gods it seemed like this was a private chat, so she led her cabin back to the Aphrodite cabin. Annabeth did the same, who privately she swore to herself she would find the answers she craved. Nobody noticed the dark look in Luke's eyes as he led Hermes' cabin back to their cabin. I was right. No matter what small steps the gods take, it means nothing. The rest of the gods cannot spare even 5 minutes with their own children, and yet Naruto gets the full attention and love of 2 gods for himself. Despicable. I swear I will lead Lord Kronos' revival and rid this world of those traitorous gods once and for all. Luke thought to himself angrily. He had begun to question whether the gods needed to be replaced when the 2 new cabins were built, but seeing Naruto's claiming and loving parents reaffirmed his belief in the gods' destruction. Meanwhile, back with Naruto, Apollo and Artemis. As soon as the campers had left, Artemis snapped her fingers, making them disappear into the Artemis cabin so they could have some privacy. As soon as Naruto blinked away the slight disorientation of godly travel, his mother pulled him into a tight hug, pressing his face into her chest as she whispered into his hair, "It's okay, our little moon and sun, we are here." Apollo just stood back as he watched mother and son reunite with a smile. He would get some time shortly, but he knew that Artemis, no matter what she claimed, was a mess when she and him were forced to let Naruto leave the hunt so he could make his way to Camp Half-Blood on his own. Ka-chan. Naruto said quietly, just enjoying the love of his mother which he sorely missed. He knew it was a bit greedy of him since most demigods rarely saw their godly parent more than once a year due to the ancient laws, while he had two godly parents who watched him always. After several minutes Apollo coughed, getting the attention of Naruto and Artemis, who broke the hug. "Looking good with the Artemis traits, I gotta say," Apollo commented as Artemis smiled widely as she took in her son's new eyes and hair. "Normally a claiming would not affect your appearance, but since you are different than demigods, I guess Artie's appearance also got reflected on you," Apollo remarked as Artemis frowned at the nickname. "Dad, you are doing it again," Naruto told him with a sigh, referring to the nickname and the fact he overanalyzed things again. "Sorry, kiddo." Apollo chuckled only to grunt as Naruto launched himself into his dad for a tight hug which he returned effortlessly as if he promised for years. "Dad, Mom, I have made some friends here, but I still miss you and the hunt every day," Naruto admitted as both parents smiled at him. "We miss you too, sweetheart," Artemis said as Naruto pulled away and sat in between his parents on a bed labeled Chloe. Won't big sis Chloe be mad I am sitting on her bed?" Naruto asked with a wince as he remembered how protective his bug sisters were about their things. Artemis chuckled and just said, "Of course not, Naruto. Remember you slept next to them almost every night when you were a child." Artemis had fond memories of Naruto as a toddler, crawling and falling asleep into the tents of Zoe and Chloe on odd nights, which neither minded getting to cuddle with their little brother. Naruto was embarrassed, especially when Zoe started to seem different to him, kinda like how he saw Silena, but still different. Naruto flushed and said, "I was a kid back then. I am a lot more mature now." Both parents just smiled at their son, who tried to act like a rebellious teen but in their eyes was still their baby who could talk now. "Sure, you are sunshine," Apollo teased as they just sat there until Naruto realized something. "Won't Lord Zeus be mad you are both here with me? Wasn't the whole point of me going to Camp Half-Blood so he would feel you won't smothering me too much?" Naruto asked in worry. He was worried his parents would get in trouble for contacting him in the one place they were not supposed to. To his surprise, his parents gave him pained smiles. "Father has bigger issues on his hands right now than watching what we do," Apollo said evasively as Naruto glared at him with the same look Artemis usually did when they disagreed. "Alright, I guess I will explain." Apollo relented when Artemis gave him a look as well. He explained how the Master Bolt was stolen and how Zeus was sure Poseidon had something to do with it despite the lack of proof. "You mean?" Naruto asked in shock. "Yes, your friend Percy will be grave danger and a quest will need to issued soon before the summer solstice," Artemis said gravely. "Well, why can't you guys find it?" Naruto asked in shock as he knew his father could see anything underneath the sun and his mother's tracking skill was unrivaled. The twins looked at each uneasily. "Father did send us, Hermes and Ares, out to scout for it, but for months we were unsuccessful," Artemis said sadly. "It is almost like a godly force is hiding it from my sight, which should not be possible since gods and titans cannot steal each other's symbols of powers. Only demigods can, but then we would be able to find it," Apollo remarked as Naruto looked troubled as well. Naruto widened in realization. "Wait, is this why you have been acting so worried the last few months?" Naruto asked as his parents nodded. "Yes, ever since the winter solstice we have feared more and more that father would see you as a threat, so we sent you away to Camp Half-Blood so he would have no reason to doubt your innocence," Apollo revealed as he looked sadly at Naruto, expecting to see scorn only to see understanding. "I get it, but I don't understand why everyone assumes Percy is the thief. He is like totally new to everything," Naruto said with annoyance as Artemis just smiled mirthlessly. "Father is too proud to see reason right now and he has to find someone to blame. Uncle Poseidon has always been the closest to rival father's powers, so it makes him an easy target," Artemis explained. Naruto sighed and asked something he was wondering for a while. "I realize Auntie Hestia is not supposed to interact with demigods, but where is she? I have only seen her once at camp since I got here." He had seen her at the campfire and swore Percy saw her too, but she only winked at him and vanished in the flames before he could talk to her. "Your auntie has the most important job right now," She is the only reason father has not gone to war with uncle already. She is the only thing that keeps Olympus stable right now, but I fear if the Master Bolt is not returned by the summer solstice, not even, she will be able to hold back father's rage. Artemis revealed as Naruto grew infuriated that his peace-loving aunt was forced to play peacemaker when his grandfather was not seeing right. Naruto was about to ask more, but Apollo just stood up and said, "Sorry kiddo, but it's time to explain to the camp who you really are." Artemis held Naruto's hand as she prepared to teleport them out of the cabin, which was enchanted so only her, Apollo, Naruto and the hunt could actually enter. Not even other gods were able to enter without permission. "Are you guys going to tell them about Naruto asked, looking down at his stomach. Artemis and Apollo just smiled at him before wrapping him in a brief hug. "Of course not. Nobody but us and the council needs to know about the other power you hold, Naruto," Artemis assured him as they disappeared in a light, ready to explain this to Greek demigods. Naruto blinked as he and his parents were teleported to the big house, and he saw 14 chairs around a very large table with Mr. D and Chiron sitting in the head of the table in much more extravagant chairs. "Yay, now we got Apollo, Artemis and Nate here, we can finally start this meeting," Mr. D said in a dramatic tone, flinching when Artemis gave a glare for the wine god, saying her son's name wrong on purpose. Everyone instantly bowed at the two Olympians, while Naruto blushed slightly when his mom fussed over him and whispered, "Sit on the seat for my cabin, Naruto. It's your birthright to represent me at this camp." Naruto nodded and waved back to Silena when she beamed at him, making his mother frown but keep a stoic expression. He also waved to Annabeth, who looked at in surprise but still waved back. He sat in between Lee and Charles Beckendorf in a seat that had his mother's moon on it. Naruto exchanged a fist bump with his paternal brother Lee, making Apollo smile before turning serious again. "Since Lady Artemis and Apollo are rarely at camp, I think it is only appropriate for each cabin counselor to introduce themselves to start with," Chiron suggested as the gods nodded their agreement. Naruto was a bit annoyed when he looked around and saw several guys have blushes when they saw his mother. He knew his mother had an effect on guys without even trying due to her beauty, but he still wanted to defend his mother's honor. However, he knew better than anyone his mom would turn any guy that lusted after her into a woodland creature for at least a while, so he calmed himself down. Naruto saw the first 3 chairs and was a bit confused. He knew there were no living children of Zeus, and Hera only had an honorary cabin, but why was Percy not here to represent Poseidon? "Hello, Lady Artemis, Lord Apollo. I am Katie Gardner and I represent my mother Demeter of cabin 4. Katie said with a polite bow. Naruto looked at her and see a girl his age with brown hair and brown eyes, who looked at with a polite but curious look when he saw him look at her. Naruto bashfully looked away as his father smirked in pride, nursing a bump on his head courtesy of his mother. "I am Clarice LaRue on behalf of cabin 5 Ares." Clarice said gruffly and added, "Lady Artemis, Lord Apollo." When Cryon gave her a reproachful look. Naruto expected this kind of behavior from her and knew luckily neither of his parents would get that offended. "It is an honor, Lady Artemis and Lord Apollo, to be in your presence," Annabeth said in awe as Apollo grinned and Artemis looked intrigued by the girl. "My name is Annabeth Chase and I represent cabin 6 Athena," she added as she looked at Naruto, still in awe due to the fact he came from 2 gods but appeared to be not a god. Artemis looked uneasy at the look from Annabeth while Apollo looked thoughtful. "I don't like the look Dad is giving me," Naruto thought as he saw Apollo give a look to Annabeth and back to him with a sly grin. Naruto knew his mother would rather him avoid any relationships while his dad wanted him to get a harem, much to his embarrassment. "Father, Lady Artemis. I am Lee Fletcher and I represent my godly father Apollo," Lee said with respect as Apollo nodded to his son while Artemis briefly looked at him with a nod. "You know me, Mom, Dad," Naruto said simply as both parents beamed at him, making the rest of the campers still a bit shocked at the level of love 2 gods had for one child. One camper in particular clenched his fist in anger as Luke restrained himself at the injustice in his eyes. "My lady, my lord, I am Charles Beckendorf who represents cabin 9 Hephaestus," Charles said with a bow of his head. "Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis, my name is Silena Beauregard and I am a friend of your son Naruto," Silena said politely, blushing slightly as Naruto beamed at her. Artemis frowned slightly as Apollo's face grew a grin. I represent my mother Aphrodite of cabin 10. Silena added as she looked down, seeing Artemis look at her critically. Artemis remembered what Aphrodite said about her chid possibly liking Naruto, so she swore she would keep a close eye on Silena for her son's sake. Artemis knew she was more than pretty enough, but she would be damned if she let her son be charmed by a girl whose mother's hobby included breaking people's hearts. Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis, I am Luke Castellan representing Hermes of cabin 11. Luke said politely as he looked down so no one saw his hatred in his eyes. Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis, I am Castor representing Dionysus of cabin 12. Castor stuttered as the gods gave him a nod. Naruto saw Mr. D's eyes shift just a bit brighter when looking at his son, but it was very discreet. I am Ethan Nakamura representing the male cabin number 13. Ethan grunted, not even pretending to be formal, as Artemis frowned but did not do anything directly. Apollo did give him a look of pity which made the son of Nemesis even more furious. Hi. Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis. I am Lou Blackstone representing the female cabin number 14. Lou said cheerfully as both Artemis and Apollo gave her looks of approval. Naruto guessed the extra cabins would feel a bit resentful for not having individual cabins for their parents, but it looked like the daughter of Hecate was right at home. Now we can. Chiron started before Artemis coughed, getting everyone attention. Wait a moment. Why is Percy Jackson not here to represent Poseidon? Artemis said bluntly as Naruto smiled happy his mother agreed with him. My lady. Percy is a new camper and he is the only one from his cabin, so. Luke said as the temperature dropped dangerously low. Luke, I am new and I am only active member of my mother's cabin. Does she not get a voice? Naruto asked as his eyes burrowed and voice dropped as everyone gulped. This was compounded when Artemis fingered a knife and glared directly at Luke. Of course not. I would never mean that, my lady. Luke stuttered, fearing for his life. He hated the Olympians but was not foolish enough to anger one in their domain. Good. Now we shall bring Percy Jackson in so every cabin who is able can get a vote. Any objections? Apollo added with a sweet smile as everyone frantically shook their head. Chiron was about to summon a camper or satyr to retrieve Percy until Apollo shook his head and snapped his finger instead. Instantly Percy reappeared in the seat for cabin 3 looking ready to puke. Dad, can you please do that nicely? Naruto asked with a sigh as Apollo just shrugged and snapped his finger again. Instantly Percy regained his normal colors as Chiron caught him up. Alright, I suppose everyone here and the other gods who are listening are wondering how I can have a son and retain my status as a maiden goddess? Artemis asked rhetorically as she swore she could see that Annabeth girl's eyes start sparkling. Is Naruto like me and my siblings? A brainchild? Annabeth guessed as Chiron tried to shush her for interrupting before Apollo waved him off. No, Annabeth, my origins are a bit different to everyone's, to be honest. Naruto responded with a thoughtful look. Over 30 years ago there was a distortion near Olympus that father instantly was paranoid about. Apollo started as everyone but the gods flinched when they heard thunder from Zeus grumbling. None of us Olympians could enter or influence the distortion until Artemis and I happened to touch it together. Zeus ordered us to go through together, much to Artemis' annoyance, so we sent a portion of our powers to keep the sun and moon running smoothly on this side. Apollo acknowledged as Mr. D grunted, confirming the story. What we didn't know was going to that world as gods would make us subject to that world's rules. We got reincarnated as mortals with our memories and powers mostly sealed. I became a woman called Kushina Uzumaki and Apollo became Minato Namikaze, and we lived their lives unaware or who we truly were. Artemis continued as everyone stared at Naruto, who had a small smile as if he heard this story hundreds of times. You don't mean that you both? Silena gasped as she saw where this story was going. Our mortal selves fell in love, got married, and even had a child together who we named Naruto in hopes he would become the hero in Apollo's sensei book. Artemis admitted with a stoic face, but Naruto could see despite her expression she still did enjoy her memories as being mortal. Naruto's birth was the happiest day of our lives. Apollo said proudly as he stared directly at Naruto when he said this, making some of the demigods feel slight jealousy at a god showing such open and honest affection for a child. However, some things happened in that world and our mortal selves died and the same day Naruto was born. Apollo said sadly as the girls gasped and the guys gave Naruto looks of pity he refused to accept. Our mortal selves' deaths restored our godly powers and memories, and we knew it was time we returned to Olympus, but we could not find in ourselves to leave our child which our mortal selves loved and created, so we brought him to Olympus and convinced Father to raise him in the hunt until this year. Artemis finished as most of the counselor looked at Apollo and Artemis with awe for doing so much for their child. Unseen to everyone, however, a certain one-eyed son of Nemesis and son of Hermes' eyes were glinting with hatred, as this proved everything they hated about the Olympians. Here they could not get recognition for every child to be accepted by their godly parents, but one child had all the love of two gods for himself. Wait, if Naruto was conceived when you were in mortal form and Lady Artemis is still a maiden in her godly form, does that not mean Naruto is a mortal then? Annabeth said as she realized from hearing the story. Yup, I am mortal, but I am a special mortal. Naruto said mischievously, grinning when Annabeth pouted at him. What Naruto means to say is people in that world have powers called chakra that makes them as powerful if not more powerful than demigods, so despite being mortal in a sense he really is a demigod in an odd way. Artemis revealed as everyone looked at Naruto in awe. Can you show us something cool with your powers? Katie asked as Naruto looked flustered at all the attention. Before anyone could ask Naruto more, Mr. D grumbled, okay, explanation time is over. Now only Nate and Perry stay. Everyone else go back to your cabins now. Mr. D commanded as everyone looked disappointed. Silena and Annabeth waved goodbye to Naruto before they left. This left a nervous Percy with three gods and his friend Naruto, who sighed. Dad, Mom, I think Percy is a bit nervous to be around three gods at once. Why don't we fetch Grover so at least he has a familiar face besides me to see? Naruto suggested as Percy sent him a grateful look. Sure, why not? Chiron, could you fetch that satyr for us? Apollo asked nicely as Chiron bowed. Of course, my lord. Just give me a few minutes. Chiron replied with respect as he wheeled him out the door. Several minutes later Chiron came back with a confused Grover until he saw Artemis and became awestruck. Lady Artemis. I am like your biggest fan. It is an honor to see you. Are you enjoying your time at camp? Grover said in rapid-fire mood as Artemis looked rather uncomfortable. Apollo on the other hand looked rather amused, although Naruto looked outright annoyed. Naruto grabbed Grover by the shoulders and started shaking him. Stop hitting on my mom. Naruto shouted, infuriated that the satyr was trying to get on his mother's good side despite how uncomfortable it made her. Artemis beamed at her son in pride. That's my boy. She thought to herself, seeing the same principles that she taught him shine. After a minute Chiron coughed and said, I think he gets the point, Naruto. Naruto set Grover back down, who looked in a daze and a little embarrassed. Naruto, I knew you smelled like nature when I first met you. Grover exclaimed, awestruck that Naruto was an actual living son of Artemis and almost beamed nature like his mother. Mr. D coughed and said, can we get on with Pete? As Grover stood next to Percy after a few seconds. Why I am here? Percy said meekly as Naruto gave him a sad look. I will be blunt. Father's master bolt, the most powerful weapon in existence, was stolen during the winter solstice and he believes Poseidon stole it through you, Percy Jackson. Artemis said stoically as Naruto frowned and Percy gaped. What? Zeus is crazy. Percy claimed as thunder boomed ahead as Naruto flinched slightly while his parents gave him discreet looks of concern. Mr. D and Chiron sighed while Grover looked ready to wet himself. Percy Jackson, it is not wise to insult the gods so lightly, especially Father. Artemis warned as Percy squirmed away from her calm but intense look. Father is paranoid, sure, and we here can all agree Uncle is no thief, but Father needs somebody to blame and Poseidon has always been an easy target. Apollo admitted as he sighed, making Percy clench his teeth. So, what, I am guilty just because Lord Zeus doesn't like my dad very much? Percy snarled with great sarcasm as Naruto sent him a look of pity. It has been that way with the gods since time started. Just like I assume all monsters will hate me as mother makes a sport of killing them over and over again. Naruto acknowledged as Artemis and Apollo gave him worried looks. Mr. D looked stoic but did nod very subtly. Percy looked out the window and saw angry-looking thunderclouds starting to converge on the camp, making him furious. His new home was being punished by Zeus over him. So, what can I do if I don't have the stupid bolt? Percy asked, ignoring the thunder outside. Your friend doesn't like to be controlled, does he? Artemis whispered to Naruto, who shook his head with a fine smile. You will have to consult the oracle to get a quest to find the master bolt. Chiron explained as Mr. D scoffed. The kid should just let me vaporize him and maybe father will spare the camp. Mr. D suggested but raised an eyebrow when Naruto stood in front of his friend protectively. Artemis and Poyo gave him a look daring him to hurt Naruto, which made him shudder slightly. Quest it is. Go upstairs into the attic and talk to the oracle for your prophecy. Chiron said kindly with a brave smile as Percy saw Grover give him a thumbs up and Naruto a smile before he climbed the ladder upstairs. Why won't she move on to the next host? Apollo mumbled in frustration as was annoyed. Even when he was gone, the oracle stayed in her decaying body instead of fresh new host like before. Artemis put her hand on his shoulder for comfort. Artemis turned to Naruto and before he can say a word she said harshly, do not go on this quest, Naruto. Naruto looked shocked before he asked why, Mom? Percy is my friend and I want to help him. Apollo smiled at Naruto's loyalty to his friends but agreed with Artemis. Because Naruto, if you join Percy on his quest, even your mother and I will be limited in our ability to help you. We will be bound by ancient laws not to affect your quest much if any, so if you go it will be without our help. Apollo warned as Naruto's eyes widened. Naruto did not know that the ancient laws would affect him being mortal on demigod quests, as his parents were always there for him, but if he went with Percy he would be on his own.